back when it felt like life was over. This young hottie was trying to convince her mom to let her get married. Hearing that, her brother, Siberi Crowd, and her dad, Shale Crowd, were totally stunned. Her mom, Rira Crowd, was sick of her whining and couldn't figure out why her daughter was so worked up today. The eldest daughter of the Crowd family said she'd rather have her mom step on her than be against the marriage. So, without a second thought, Rira stepped right on her daughter's face, then added another kick with her heel. Ramilia was stunned, not believing it happened, like her mom was ready to straight up kill her. Honestly, nothing was off the table for the lady of the house, but her daughter just wanted to talk first. Admitting she messed up, Ramilia declared she was totally serious about this. Since she'd never cared about marriage or relationships before, Mr. Shale was curious what the heck was going on. The main girl had to say that she hadn't told them anything before, even though she'd been thinking about it for a while. Viscount Roel's the guy Ramilla started this whole war over, 'cause her family's pushing her to marry him. When she woke up this morning, it was pretty damn clear to her. She'd been reincarnated. Seeing Viscount Roel's name on the paper, that hero from Wounded Sword, she knew she wanted no part of that destiny. Out of nowhere, she was trapped inside the world of this super popular novel that she'd always loved. Wounded Sword, Imperial Knights, Legendary Heroes. It's a story where the main dude is this Roel Arnon guy. The only problem? According to the reviews online, this story's total garbage. Right from the start, Roel's heart was broken. He lost the use of both his legs. He even lost his aura, making him unable to wield a sword. That's when Roel stopped being a knight. He also lost his family and his home. Everything he had was gone. And then came the darkness. That was the end of Roel. He ends up dying this pathetic death. But Ramilla just couldn't watch that happen. Thing is, even if some stranger offered to help him not become a villain, his personality would make him refuse. So, first things first, our girl decided she needed to get closer to Roel. Friendship was out. Even friends have their limits. And dating? Too risky. What if they broke up? Which left her with only one option: marry him and turn his path of blood into a freaking flower garden. Ramilla knew about Viscount Roel's situation, but she still wanted to marry him. In the original story, Roel lost a lot, but eventually, the core inside his heart was restored. Just then, his legs started working again, and he was able to move. That's why Ramilla decided to stick by him and help him, because she was sure he could get back on his feet. She was ready to fight for the right to be his wife, but her mom agreed way too easily. Her mom's silent go-ahead just pissed off Siberi even more. He was trying to prove the whole thing was pointless. He was racking his brain, trying to figure out what the hell Roel did in a past life to get stuck marrying this psycho. Ramilla hadn't exactly had it easy either, especially with her brother yapping about past lives like he knew anything about him. Of course, never even meeting the Viscount, she wasn't sure if this whole thing would even work the first time, but she was convinced that if she kept showing how she really felt, sooner or later, it'd get through to him. All her dad was hoping for was that his oldest daughter would move into the Viscount's mansion if the wedding talks went through. Thing is, Ramilla was planning on convincing her fiancé to come here instead. For Roel, who was burnt out living in the capital, there was no better place to take care of his body and soul than this. At the Arnon estate, even though his contract still had time left, the servants were called together to be thanked. It might be awkward, but still, the master thought it was better to say it to their faces. The servant was hearing about some awkwardness for the first time, considering how much they all respected the Viscount. Roel was grateful, but he couldn't figure out how to respect a boss as clueless as himself. Thanks to Jack's work, hitting the library actually became a pleasure. Every time the old man saw the garden Chris tended, it filled him with a good feeling. Because of the food Uni cooked, Roel actually looked forward to mealtime. If the Viscount could have, he would have clapped his own kin on the back. He decided to take a break, since nobody else was showing up anyway. At that moment, young Ramilla arrived at the Arnon estate, hoping to meet the Viscount. Seeing Roel in person, she almost lost it over how hot the novel's hero was in real life. Introducing herself as Ramilla Crowd, the girl tried to stay cool, even though she was freaking out inside. His question about why she came was expected. She had exactly what she wanted to offer him. Dropping to one knee before the Lord, the heroine reached out, offering to seal their first meeting with marriage. Immediately sensing the vibe of an impending rejection, she decided to kick Plan B into high gear. That's when Miss Ramilla showcased all her abilities, proving her lineage as a member of a knightly family. And of course, she's a knight too, which is why she admired Lord Roel, a fellow knight. Also, appealing to the fact she belonged to a knightly family, the plan was to confess she'd been watching him. Speaking of knights, The Viscount cast a shadow again. The truth is, he couldn't even hold a sword anymore. Plus, he barely knows this woman. Regardless of the reason for the proposal, this whole situation is way too sudden. Honestly, Ramilla knew the kind of person Roel was from her past life. But right now, he's not the same Roel. To smooth things over, she apologized to the Lord for not considering his feelings. However, Roel himself felt bad, because the girl had made him a proposal with such sincerity. She totally got him. Honestly, she wasn't expecting to nail it on the first try anyway. None of the servants even thought Ramilla would come back so chill. She was planning on keeping up the visits. The courtiers showed up right when she wanted to have a word with them. There's a limit to how much she can scheme in her head, so she needed some backup. Ramilla wanted their advice on what to do to get Lord Roel to agree. First, the young guy suggested using the young lady's power, but she shot that down. Then another servant thought bribing him with cash was a good idea, which was also a no-go. So that left one option: use Ramilla's face and her looks to charm the Duke into saying yes. Meanwhile, Vincent's research was going nowhere. It was a long shot from the start. The doc told him those shady guys he mentioned before had popped up again. They visibly relaxed when he told them the research was over. When the topic of a lady visiting Roel came up, he said it was Ramilla from Crowd County. Even though the lady came to propose to him, the Viscount turned her down. But after she admired him as a knight, he just felt like some scrub. Even though the doctor argued otherwise, Roel's so deep in debt, his wife wouldn't be happy. Looking out the window, the doctor realized that, unlike the master, Lady Ramilla wasn't giving up easily. Ramilla Crowd arrived at the Arnon mansion again, and this time she meant business. Having prepared in advance, she came today to propose to the man of her dreams. Like the Viscount said last time, it's their first meeting, but this time it's official. Of course, the heroine gave him the right to refuse again today. She wasn't trying to force him into marriage. When the master decided to pass again, Ramilla wasn't too bummed. She had another play. Still, it kinda sucked. So she asked if she could at least check out the mansion and the city's architecture. Especially these ceiling corners, they're totally charming and a highlight of the city's designs. Preferring to soak in the creativity and art on her own, Ramilla wanted to explore the mansion solo. Later, she went up to the second floor, just like she planned, hoping to bump into that kid. The plan was, she needed to get close to people close to the Viscount, like family or friends. As far as she knew, he didn't have any family, except for his little sister. While she was racking her brain on how to go back and rework everything, she suddenly ran into a kid in the hallway. Seeing that little sister, Ramilla could barely believe she managed to find her so fast. The little one noticed the lady wasn't feeling so hot, since she managed to fall, so she dragged her off to rest. Mission accomplished. The heroine managed to get into Army Arnon's room. So first, she told her she'd come to pay her respects to the esteemed knight. Hearing that, tears welled up in Army's eyes. She was sadly remembering how long it had been since her brother held a sword. The kid loved her brother, if only because he was always so kind to her. Even when the people working here screw up, Roel just smiles and doesn't get mad. Big Bro Army tries to help anyone who's having a hard time. It was enough for the girl that he mourned, alongside people going through tough times. Everything the little girl said before was the reason Ramilla respected Lord Roel. As they settled in and continued talking, the heroine noticed a book on etiquette standards in the girl's hands. Truth is, Miss Arnon often flipped through it because she had no clue what it was about. Just to be polite, Ramilla offered to help, promising to come by and teach the girl some manners. They pinky swore on it, just like that. Lady Crone scheduled her next visit. Thanks to that sweet pink and cuddly little thing, she's one step closer to pulling off Project Hero's flower path for Roel. 5 years back, when Roel was a centurion, he was responsible for how things went down in combat. When the siege was over, the soldiers found a survivor, a kid, the only one left in the village. So, Officer Roel gave the order to take the girl to a survivor camp. But they told him there was no room, so the higher-ups ordered them to just ignore the survivors. A noble knight volunteered to take the girl to the camp, but only after he just happened to ask if the officer knew her. What's more, the Lord didn't expect to run into a monster kid here, one who can rack up dozens of kills a day. After learning Roel offed about 20 today, the knight wanted to steal his achievement, promising to take the kid in exchange. Disappointment and shock flashed in the hero's eyes. He couldn't believe this was the noble knight. Turns out the centurion was smarter than Roel gave him credit for. He took the deal. He saved an innocent kid's life, even if it meant losing everything he'd worked his ass off for. That same day, Army told her brother she met Lady Ramilla and was blown away by how beautiful she was. According to her, the guest really respects Master Roel and kept going on about how awesome he is. And another reason Army was so excited was that Lady Ramilla offered to help her with her etiquette book. Master Roel turned down her marriage proposal twice, so he decided to give her the go-ahead. Still, his sister was worried about him being comfortable and was even ready to back out. Maybe it's because she's been through battlefields and lived in camps. She's so good at reading bad vibes. Since Army comes from a commoner family, she never got a chance to hang out with kids from noble houses. Because of her noble title as a Viscount's daughter, she couldn't even hang out with common kids. So, the girl spends all her time alone, just burying herself in books. Lady Ramilla could become a friend to Army. I bet it's been a long time since she's had one. Roel was surprised she even suggested it, but he was happy his sister met someone nice. He knew deep down that the little tyke would be crushed if he said no. While training with Carol, our lead was having a blast, unlike the poor maid. But everything the maid taught her just wasn't cutting it, and she needed serious training ASAP. Ramilla went to etiquette lessons for 3 days, but Carol swears anyone would think she only went for 1. It only took 30 minutes, and in those 30 minutes, the lady couldn't even focus. But she didn't really care about that. It's the marriage that she's really focused on. No sooner did Ramilla decide to bolt than she ran smack dab into some strangers hiding their faces under dark cloaks. These guys knew her name, but they definitely weren't your average Joe Schmoes. Before taking any action, they were politely asking Ramilla Crowd to leave the capital. But if she dared to refuse, this wanderer would have no choice but to draw his sword. Those words might have sounded more intimidating if she wasn't already sure the party had started. Listening to their pathetic cries for help a moment later, she hoped they wouldn't have any more questions. With brute force, the frail warrior maiden forced them to grovel and beg for forgiveness on their knees. If they didn't spill the beans about who sent them, Ramilla was going to wreck their world all over again. But light kicks and punches weren't doing the trick. Even without their cloaks, these guys swore they knew nothing, not understanding why they took the job if they knew jack. She figured she'd start with their fingers. But when one of them admitted it was all about the cash, it was clear they were just like those servant dudes. In that case, the heroine wanted to place an order too, offering something truly valuable as payment. After getting the gemstone, Garan and his partner agreed to be her loyal servants and fulfill any wish. Despite Karel's annoyance, the girl was now more interested in whether anyone was interested in Roel. To the maid, this all looked like a threat from some lady who was head over heels for the master. But that wasn't in the original story. Plus, during the last meeting, Army said they hadn't had guests in ages. In that case, Ramilla decided to find out for herself tomorrow if Master Roel had a secret lover. But upon meeting him, she didn't miss the chance to ask, just in case, if he was ready to accept her offer. Even though it seemed to the hero like the bouquet was getting bigger and bigger, he was forced to refuse. Nevertheless, Roel's reaction was somehow milder than before. Since Ramilla had been turned down 3 times, she figured it was the perfect time to ask if the guy was seeing anyone. She just suddenly wondered, like, if he already had a girl, getting proposed to all the time would be awkward. The dude didn't hide the fact that he wasn't in a relationship with anyone. Plus, he'd never even dated. Out of nowhere, he bowed and thanked Lady Ramilla for agreeing to teach his sister some manners. The lady wanted to say she'd eaten, but she came on an empty stomach, wanting their first meal to be together. At that, the Viscount suggested they have dinner, and the girl nodded her head like 100 times. For the first time, the guy cracked a smile. There really was something special about Lady Ramilla, being at the same table as the main character and his sister. This was her chance to score some points. Lady Crowd decided to start the etiquette lesson for the girl with the rules on how to sit properly. She told her to sit down on the right side of the chair and leave from the left, even though everyone else thought it was backwards. Ramilla, realizing she screwed up, immediately blamed it on testing Army, claiming she deliberately gave the wrong answer. The rest of the lesson looked like she knew nothing about etiquette, but was just testing the girl. But when Lord Roel ordered her to stop, she froze, feeling like he'd totally busted her. Actually, he was just worried Milady hadn't had a chance to eat, but she was happy and felt like she got away with it. Soon, Fidel paid a visit to Viscount Ormond. They hadn't seen each other in ages. He came out of the blue to deliver Captain Roel's resignation, entrusted to him by Viscount Ormond. The only good thing is that National Guardsmen can get a severance package when they retire. This was news to Roel, even though he was sure the higher-ups knew about his situation. Telling the captain not to worry, Fidel, as a treasury worker, promised to get the treasury in order. As for his old job, the workload had skyrocketed since Lord Roel left. Whenever something went down, they shipped them off there. But they weren't the only knights in the Empire. If they just fired the commoner knights, the brass would get slammed with criticism. so the rumor was they were sending guys there to die. So, Fidel had no choice but to find a new job just to survive. Good news though, he recently got married back in his hometown, and now he's got a wife. Roel instantly figured he married Kay, since they were always together. It'd be weird if he didn't know. Even though they were always together, Fidel was constantly getting beat up. As for Roel, he didn't have any news, though for some reason, Lady Ramiel kept popping into his head. A weird embarrassment crept onto his face, and his eyes started darting around playfully, like he was looking for a distraction. Normally, if Fidel noticed that, he'd just laugh and keep talking. But today, the captain looked suspicious. Since the boss was here on business, he couldn't pry. But next time, he definitely wanted an answer. And they jumped right into it, digging through every single document. It looked like the captain's finances were solid, but turns out that was a lie. Fidel was blown away by how this guy had held it together solo for so long, and how he ended up in this mess. Figuring Roel was drowning trying to handle it all alone, he decided to give him at least a little bit of power. The financial situation needed fixing ASAP, but then the Viscount ran into someone willing to help. He was totally hyped for the moment he could finally rely on this guy. Soon, a letter came from Fidel. Turns out getting paid wasn't so easy. Even when he asks his boss why, he just keeps saying the deputy minister shut it down. The weird part is, even Fidel's boss doesn't get the vice minister's decision. He felt genuinely bad breaking that news to the captain, even though Roel didn't know anyone in the finance ministry. This news hit the Viscount hard. He felt like he was just a burden to everyone around him. The treatment for his damaged core just wasn't working, and now all hope was gone. If only the guy could use his aura. But it was stupid to think it would magically come back. Just then, the doors burst open, letting in a gust of wind, as Lady Ramilla stormed in, shouting. But she froze, sensing something was off. A weird vibe swirling around the Viscount. Seeing his combat sword, she realized things weren't normal at all. No weird vibe was gonna scare her off, so Ramilla announced she was back to make another proposal. And once again, Roel turned her down. But his mood was dark today, like something was really wrong. Even though he insisted everything was fine, she could imagine a million stories behind that look on his face. She couldn't pry any further, so she changed the subject to the window and the great weather outside. This was the perfect time to suggest a sunny walk with Army to master. But Roel turned her down again, said he had unfinished business. He suggested she take Army instead, which made it clear something was definitely up with him. The little one was stoked about the trip, but she wanted her brother to come too, said he was definitely doing fine till morning. This morning, the girl handed over a letter from her brother's friend. He smiled when he checked the name. Hearing the sender was Fidel, Ramila immediately remembered that he was Roel's buddy. If it's a letter from Fidel, this might be about getting his paycheck. But why the vice minister was so reluctant to give him his salary was still a mystery. Even in the novel, there wasn't much info related to finances. Snapping out of her thoughts, Lady Ramilla suddenly decided to ask if there was anywhere Army wanted to go. Turns out, the place the kid wants to go is the theater. But now that she's thought about it again, she doesn't think she wants to go there anymore. Suddenly, Army saw a sign pointing to the park and said she wanted to go there instead. Judging by her face, Ramilla figured she was getting anxious about the sign. But she was trying her hardest to act like she never wanted to see some big hit, like White Flowers in the Temple. Lady Crowd was bummed, because she's a huge fan of parks. But she hates going alone, and she was stoked when her little sister mentioned the theater. Ramilla thought she'd finally found someone who likes theaters, but realized it was just wishful thinking. Army felt a little awkward then, but she suggested they still go to the theater. So, for going with her, the main character promised to let her pick the show. Meanwhile, the Viscount's mansion was in complete chaos. Looks like Roel couldn't handle the news. Right after the play, the girls hit up a cafe. The show was way better than they expected, especially that scene where the main character miraculously recovers from his illness. That was the best. Yeah, it was a play about a hero overcoming a supposedly incurable disease. Ramilla figured that Army, seeing the main character, was probably picturing Roel. Come to think of it, the kid was already here with her little brother. That wasn't in the original story. For her sake, since it was her first time in the capital, Roel showed her around, and they hung out. Army got to try a bunch of new stuff back then. There were so many amazing things. After that, they decided to check out the play. And the kid still couldn't believe her brother couldn't walk anymore. But Ramilla was sure he'd get back on his feet. After all, that event's the whole point of this novel. Even still, the little one was worried because her brother looked so down. Things were fine when he was doing research with Viscount Orm, but he's been losing steam ever since. All little Army asked was for Ramilia to visit as often as she could when she was in the capital, With her showing up, Roll's daily life, which was always the same, seems to have changed a little. The whole time, the heroine wondered if she was doing the right thing, but she never imagined the girl felt this way. She only agreed on the condition that the little one could pick out any outfits she wanted at the clothing boutique. That was on Carol's advice, who insisted the clothes should be memorable. That way, every time Army wears the gift, she'll think of Lady Ramilia. Plus, Lord Roll will think of her too when he sees the clothes. Army was scared it was too expensive, so she didn't know how she could get something so fancy. Since they made a deal, and the heroine always keeps her promises, she decided to buy at least 4 dresses. The little one tried her best to stop her, but the lady managed to snag at least 3 dresses. Truth is, the girl was super grateful and promised to take good care of the clothes. Lady Ramilla gave her a note with her address on it. Of course, young Miss Arnon could now contact her anytime without feeling pressured. Odds are, there'll be a time when she really needs her help. Skoko Army got back home with her gifts, but her brother wasn't there to meet her. He usually always comes out to greet her, so she decided to go to his study herself. Memories instantly flashed before her eyes as she walked in on her brother demanding Orm. Lord Roll was devastated, tears streaming down his face, and he hasn't felt his legs since that day. It was the same back then, and Army won't be able to handle it if something like that happens again. Remembering Lady Ramil's words, she didn't want to dwell on the bad stuff, the depressing past. Thinking her little bro was definitely going to get better, the girl burst into the office with a happy shout. You can imagine her relief when she saw her brother standing there, looking totally normal. But as soon as she got closer, she noticed his hair was a mess, and his clothes were all wrinkled. It was clear that after that incident, her brother started drinking when no one was around. And it could happen again today. Roll explained his flushed face by saying it was probably just too hot in the room. But it was the first time he'd seen Army in such a pretty outfit, and it looked amazing on her. And then the girl told him everything that happened with Lady Ramil, sure that her brother would be happy about it. Holding out her pinky, the little one wanted him to promise that next time, they'd all go together. Right then, Roll couldn't spill the whole truth, so he pinky promised instead. Only after the kid was finally asleep could the boss let out a huge sigh of relief. Suddenly, a hidden bottle of booze fell to the floor. Lucky his sister didn't see it. In that instant, the guy felt utterly worthless. The next morning, Ramila only woke up because Carol promised to send Garan back. After a quick pack-up, they went to meet that dude who tried to scare the miss. Turns out, he did everything he could, but still couldn't find the guy he was looking for. Half his face was gone, so the guy couldn't dig up anything. Ramila was getting pissed when she realized this freak hadn't found squat. But she felt a little better as soon as she learned that Garan had found something interesting instead. Not long before this, waiting for their client, Garan and his partner were sweating bullets, thinking they were going to get offed. When they met up, they had to break the news. They'd botched the job. Turns out, the target was way more skilled than they figured. Even the 2 of them weren't enough. Like the client asked, the mercs made threats. But the second Garan drew his sword, the girl flipped a switch. Her reaction speed was instant, and her dodging was flawless. If they kept fighting, they were just gonna die. The client found that weird, since he'd heard the girl was lazy and skipped training all the time. Either way, he told the guys to just act like nothing ever happened. Before leaving, he reminded them what would happen if any details leaked out. Once the boss was gone, the mercs started tracking him, sniffing him out by the stench of rot. This guy met up with another dude. Since they were both wearing hoods, it was obvious they were a crew. So the guys finally made it to the door, where those 2 shady dudes disappeared. They were out of options. Had to use the eavesdropping artifact. In the meeting, the guy in the black hood reported they couldn't run off the Cloud Lady. He wanted a shot to prove himself, but the boss was shutting that down for now. Suddenly, the talking stopped, and Garan started getting seriously jumpy. When the Wanderer opened the door, nobody was there, so he figured he was just hearing things. Ramilla was only weirded out that these guys mentioned what to do with Fidel at the end. Since she and Fidel both help Roel, and could help in the future, they want them gone. In other words, the dude trying to chase off the heroine doesn't like the Viscount. Garan wasn't sure if they should keep digging into the Black Hood, thinking they were chasing something bad. Convinced the Black Hood was gonna hurt Roel, our girl needed to figure out their next move first. Dropping another gem for intel, she asked them to find out who sent the Black Hood in the first place. Looks like this guy's way more dangerous than Ramilla ever thought. The next day, she decided to find out if these guys had a grudge against Roel. Obviously, even though he's a hero of the Empire, from an enemy's point of view, he's a devil on the battlefield. Ramilla thought so too, but she couldn't figure out why these guys went after her instead of just killing him. According to her servant, it's because the job would become a real pain. Like, if Roll gets killed and it turns out the North's behind it, public opinion's gonna turn real ugly against them. And the worst-case scenario is a full-blown war breaking out. The servant was sure that if nothing happened to Master Roel, the Imperial Palace would take care of business. After hearing that, Ramilla figured it was better to make them disappear completely than just kill them. We gotta stop these guys now, so they don't even get a chance to get what they want. But that huge power could put Roel in danger, and she didn't know if she could stop them. Carl suddenly wondered if his mistress had forgotten to go propose to Viscount Roel. Ramilla would rather get some intel, realizing that this is actually some kind of mysterious power. This whole problem is easily solved once she marries Roel, 'cause the Crowd family can protect him. Word is, if your proposal gets rejected more than 3 times, it's considered a major humiliation. Not losing hope, the heroine never thought she'd have to propose this many times. But every time she gets rejected, she just gets more determined. After all, she thinks Roel is a genuinely good dude. It's hard to put into words, but she thought marrying him would make her life more fun and vibrant. But the Viscount just wasn't getting it. He saw it as some girl crushing on him, nothing more. Thing is, knowing the original story, she understood him better than anyone else possibly could. Even so, there was still this massive gulf between them. Not much she could do about it, since Roel's perspective was totally different from Ramil's. Suddenly, she decided to visit Army and asked her brother for permission. Roel bowed, thanking her for the clothes she gave him. He was all fidgety, like he was trying to say something, but couldn't. But just then, she bolted, all flustered, saying she had to run. The Viscount was alone again, when he'd wanted to ask her to hang out next time. No matter how much he thought about her, he knew deep down Miss Ramilla was way out of his league. When she finally came upstairs, she found Army reading. The kid was stoked to see her, but the girl hadn't put on the clothes she'd given her. She felt bad wearing them around the house. Mrs. Crowd was like, "Dude, it's etiquette 101. You gotta wear the gift you get." Right now, the little one was hitting the books, working through some math problems. She soaked up a ton of knowledge thanks to her brother and Baron Dallas helping her out. That name rang a bell for Ramilla. It was definitely in the novel, but she couldn't place it. According to Army, he hasn't been around this month. He's been tied up with his shop. This shop gig made her think the guy was probably a merchant or something. Anyway, the main character didn't remember much. She was gonna check him out herself, see if he was a bad guy. Army even pointed out the Baron's store on a map and marked the location. To avoid raising suspicion, Ramilla said she was also super into math, and that she'd really love to chat with Baron Dallas about it. The little girl was thrilled that Milady was so well versed in etiquette and had such a strong interest in mathematics. So the heroine booked it to Baron Dallas's place after saying a quick goodbye. In young Miss Arnon's eyes, this lady was genuinely someone with a huge passion for learning. When she met up with Carell, the heroine immediately said she needed to meet with someone. The maid guessed it was another operation and asked what her mistress wanted to buy. Turns out, Baron Dallas's name is all over the newspapers. He's a total celebrity who managed to sell out his self-help book. Carell says he sells all kinds of stuff. Clothes, accessories, food, even weapons. The Baron in Rome was a merchant, dealing weapons with Roel. But there's gotta be more to it. Once Ramilla got there, she hoped the right answer would pop up when they met. Even after trying a bunch of times to get in, no one opened the door. But she could hear someone inside. If you look close, the door's busted. Someone definitely forced their way in. Just in case, she told Carell to get the knights, then boldly stormed into the mansion. Turns out, nobody was inside, so she decided to check the second floor. After knocking on the second floor door, Ramilla apologized and went in, like she wasn't even looking around. Just then, a guy jumped out from around the corner and swung, but she instantly drew her sword and blocked him. How cowardly to attack while hiding! Just like I figured, it was yesterday's Black Hood. The guy who looked like he was Baron Dallas was out cold. Now it was just a matter of what they knew about each other. But the main thing was, the Black Hood wasn't a chick. Surprisingly, she dodged his attacks like it was nothing, and even asked who ordered him to do this. If the Black Hood wasn't gonna talk straight, this wasn't just gonna end with a few punches. Ramilla just wanted to know if the guy knew why she'd picked up a sword in the first place. Suddenly, her attention was grabbed by the Baron. He was getting worse, and bright red blood was spilling from his mouth. Taking advantage of the moment, the Black Hood broke free and jumped out the window, trying to make a run for it. If she'd given chase, she could have caught him. But the Baron could be in even more danger right now. 2 paths, both equally important, were tearing her up inside, trying to decide which to choose. Deciding to catch the attacker later, she desperately ran to save the Baron. She didn't find any serious injuries, but the guy's pale face screamed poisoning. Swinging hard, the girl started whacking the dude on the back, trying to get him to wake up and puke the poison out. Just then, the Baron opened his eyes and said it hurt, which almost made our girl faint. He managed to croak out that Black Hood stole something from the secret safe. Before the Baron could say what was stolen, his face suddenly went white, and he passed out again. 2 days later, she still couldn't figure out why she was being grilled as a suspect. I mean, she found the victim and the perp, and she'd been busting her butt for 2 days straight. Thanks to her, the Baron got treatment fast and dodged a major bullet, but he's still out cold. If Ramila hadn't gone looking for the Baron or chased after Black Hood, Baron Dallas would be pushing up daisies. First thing she thought during the investigation, she, Fidel, and Dallas all have something in common. These guys are tied to Sir Roel and have been threatening or hurting the people around him the whole time. But there's another person connected to Roel, someone who's helping research his illness. If the predictions are right, the next person in danger is Viscount Orm. The original story said he just vanished one day. Now that I think about it, that's messed up, which is why Seaton and Mark were ordered to protect Viscount Orm, who talked to Roel a lot. Ramilla was a little anxious during the interrogation and figured that's why she was getting sleepy. She was dreaming of catching the Black Hood, since he must have stolen something important from the Baron. And until Master Dallin wakes up, all she can do is wait to find out what it was. Meanwhile, Master Orm was trying to find the right documents, wasting his time because everything was stolen last time. Sitting in his empty lab, he suddenly heard a weird noise coming from outside. The doors burst open, and 2 figures stormed in, faces hidden under black hoods. Orm panicked, realizing they'd sent thugs last time, but now they were here themselves. He just wanted to know why they were so desperate to shut down the research. Of course, for these Black Hoods guys, it all comes back to that bastard Roel. Just as the attacker struck, the Crow family knights charged into the lab, yelling, and formed a shield. Receiving their ladies' orders, the brave Mark and Seaton obeyed without question, setting up a defensive line. For Orm's sake, Mark announced they were there on Lady Ramila's orders. Skilled fighters, the guys fought hard, but the enemy's power was overwhelming. Feeling completely drained, Mark lost focus for a second and took a heavy blow. Seaton went down right after him, the kid feeling like he'd taken multiple hits to the chest. Things were critical. 2 more mysterious figures in black hoods just showed up to help the clan members. Rounding up the commoners, the clan leader ordered the others to take care of them. But the clan members were worried about the Crowd family getting involved if they killed them. Still, the leader figured it was better to leave no evidence behind. Suddenly, a rock came flying in from outside. Lady Ramila couldn't sleep, knowing she only sent 2 knights. But now, seeing the situation for herself, she had to decide if she should step in. The girl seemed way too relaxed, even with enemies right in front of her. Letting one of them attack, she told them if they lost, they'd better get on their knees and spill everything. And Ramila also warned them that if they clammed up, they wouldn't escape her beatings. Sensing the first pathetic attempt to attack, the girl instantly unleashed her sword aura. Seeing how she uses her aura, the guy in the black hood told his boys to stand down. Looking at the Crowd Warrior's insane potential, he knew damn well she could beat them to a pulp. That's when the whole clan charged. But the girl was already bored doing this for the 3rd time. Ramila's magic sword, an unstoppable force, instantly unleashed a torrent of mana on the enemy. She couldn't believe these guys were so weak they couldn't even block her aura. Now that she'd taken care of the main threat, it was time to check on the Viscount. Orm was completely baffled when he heard the lady had knocked all the enemies unconscious to buy time. But after checking the attackers, Seaton regretfully announced that they were all dead. Ramila's strike wasn't strong enough to kill them. This felt like the Dallas situation all over again. Judging by their skin color, looks like these guys drank poison beforehand. Assassin's Guild members have been using this method lately. They're bound to poison, and only get the antidote if the mission's a success. First and foremost, the Viscount's health was the priority, so the heroes needed to get back as soon as possible. Even though it was late, Viscount Orm thanked the lady and her knights for the rescue. He was curious how Lady Ramila knew the Black Hood would come to his lab looking for him. Army told her that the Viscount was close with Sir Roel. Recently, Baron Dallas was also ambushed by the Black Hood, and stuff was stolen from his safe too. Of course, it's just speculation, but Ramila thinks they're targeting people around Roel to isolate him. Now that Orm thought about it, he remembered those guys mentioned Sir Roel before they attacked. So they were trying to control his research, so he couldn't help Sir Roel recover. Orm, thinking about what was stolen from the safe, came up with some theories, so he decided to go straight to the master. If his hunches were right, it was probably the ownership rights to the Arnon mansion. In other words, these bastards were going to threaten Sir Roel with the house deed. The problem was, Baron Dallas, who could testify that the documents were stolen, was out cold. Under the circumstances, Sir Roll wouldn't have any choice but to do whatever they told him. And no matter how much he begged those guys, they'd kick him out, just like in the original story. Switching gears, Sir Orm decided to ask if Ramilia had actually come to the capital to propose. Convinced he was right, he was really hoping the lady would get closer to Sir Roel and marry him. He was certain that the only one who could save Roel from the danger he was in was Lady Ramilia. Right in the middle of their conversation, a message came in urgently from Viscount Roel's mansion. Opening the letter, she instantly gasped, a huge ball of rage building inside her. Those ruthless bastards must have already arrived, because Army was begging for help in the letter. First things first, she bolted to the estate. Little Army was scared out of her mind. She had no idea what was going on behind her brother's office door, but it was loud as hell. Before doing anything, Ramilia told the maids to take Army to her room. Hand on her heart, she promised everything would be okay. Her big sis would fix it. She learned from the maid that bandits had suddenly stormed in, going wild and demanding they leave the mansion. Hearing that Roel had called the bandits into his office, she immediately decided to put an end to this. Entering the office, the first thing she saw was the master, helpless and surrounded by brutal attackers. Panicked, she rushed over to him, needing to make sure he was all right. His naive, tear-filled eyes locked onto what looked like the last ray of hope. Spotting the stranger, the enraged thug grabbed her shoulder and demanded she identify herself. But Ramila wasted no time, grabbing his arm and snapping it clean in two. One hit was all it took to take that bastard down, and she could feel the other thug's legs shaking. The second one went down next, leaving only the last guy, who decided to apologize. Apologies were way too late. In her rage, the warrior maiden couldn't control her bloodlust. At the last second, Lord Orm stopped her, but figured she'd already done enough. After all, Lord Roel was still there, shaken and completely freaked out by what had just happened. After it was all over, the thugs admitted they'd been tricked, lured by a free house and stolen bonds. Barely holding herself back from killing them, Ramila told them their apologies belonged to Roel. Those guys should be in jail. They got off easy with all their limbs still attached. After apologizing for going too far, Ramila figured these were guys trying to off Roel. And the reason for that is some assassin took a shot at Viscount Orm today. Plus, a few days back, Baron Dallas also caught a beating. Learning the whole truth, the Viscount was beyond grateful for her help. If it wasn't for Lady Ramila, he wouldn't even know the real reason they kicked him out. In that case, she thought it wasn't too late to get him to accept her marriage proposal. This time, she honestly believed it was too dangerous for Roel to stay here right now. But the guy preferred to be alone, since the Crowd estate is going to be a target down the road. Not proposing just for kicks, she didn't get why he thought they'd take a loss because of him. Even Orm was saying this marriage wasn't a bad deal for the Crowder family. I mean, the fame and prestige of being tied to a war hero like Roel is huge. If he ever felt trapped, he could always tell himself it was an investment. All Roel wanted was a chance to think. But hey, Ramilia's got patience. From now on, Roel's gonna be a non-stop target for every enemy out there. So, staying in the capital is way too dangerous for Lady Army and Roel. It looked like Lady Ramilia proposed, because she was head over heels for him. But if that affection ever fades for some reason, he's got no idea what'll happen to him. This marriage is all based on Ramilia's favor, but she could get sick of him and file for divorce. Then, he'd have no rights or reason to fight it. He wouldn't even get a chance to resist, he'd just be kicked to the curb. Even so, Orm still wanted them to get married. Not knowing how long this marriage would last, Roel needed an umbrella to weather the storm. Before saying the same thing to Arm, he decided to get her opinion on Lady Ramiel first. The little kid thought the lady was a genuinely cool and nice person. That's why she was over the moon when she found out the lady had proposed to her brother. She really liked the news, since they were both good people to her. And if two such bright people are together, that would be awesome, even if it might not be. If this marriage goes through, there's a good chance the Arnon family will join the Crowd family. There could be a lot of problems if the Crowd family folks are like the nobles of the past. Arm reassured him it'd be all right. But she understood what her brother was worried about. And she was going to do whatever it took to impress the adults. After hearing that, Roel kinda regretted raising a girl who'd say stuff like that. When they met, Mr. Orm told Ramiela that Roel was scared of breaking up, cause he was such a newbie. Honestly, she took it too lightly, skipping the dating part and just straight up proposed. Peeking into the room, Arm said her brother wanted to talk to Milady in private. On the way, Miss Crowd tried to keep her cool, hoping he'd finally say yes this time. But she didn't expect Roel to agree to be her partner so easily, promising to do his best. Finally, she and Roel were a thing, and Ramiela was ready to do whatever it took to be a good partner to him. Maybe this sounds messed up, but the guy wanted to lay down some ground rules for the marriage. One of the things the Viscount demanded was that she'd take responsibility for Arm if he ever left the Crowd family. Even if he and Army broke up, the boss would rather she be safe. Of course, the heroine had no problem with that, and she agreed to his terms without a second thought. She promised to add her own conditions later, once she got back. For now, all she wanted was for Roel to take care of her in the future, just like he wanted the same. Soon, the day finally came when both heroes would finally return to Crowd, and Ramilla had been waiting for this moment more than anything. But when she met with Lord Roel, her expectations crashed and burned when she saw him in a bad mood. The boss thought the house was empty because nobody lived there, and apologized for rushing things. Army went with Carol, so it was time for them to get going too. Looks like Roel's really attached to the mansion. This place was a gift from the imperial family. Since it was his first home, Ramilla suggested he take his time and look around properly. Thinking about it now, a lot has actually happened here. Like this girl proposed on her very first day, and kept popping the question over and over every single day after that. This is also where she met Army for the first time and totally screwed up at the dinner table. And she even got to see Roel at his lowest point, something she only ever imagined. Just like Ramilla promised herself when she got here, she's gonna help Roel get a happy ending, no matter what. After flashing back through a few memories, the young master was ready to go. His flowery path was just beginning. But outside, they saw two guys harassing poor old Karel. Unlike Kay, the former Night Squad member was worried about Roel marrying this lady. Kay showed up because he heard Master Roel was leaving the capital. So, figuring those two were straight up screwed, the Viscount laid out a couple of simple reasons why. Hearing all the crazy dangerous stuff that had gone down in that short amount of time, Fidel was seriously pissed. Luckily, nothing happened to them. He just got transferred to a new department. Since his boss kept spewing garbage, Fidel went to the vice minister himself and grabbed him by the collar, just a little. The next day, his desk was gone, and for some reason, he was stuck doing all the leftover work. That's when the Viscount got a sudden offer to join the Crowd family's knighthood. Ramilla suggested that both Viscount Orm and Baron Dallas come to Crowd for their own safety too. After Baron Dallas recovers, Kai and Fidel promised to come together. The carriage arrived soon after, but it wasn't the low-riding one the lady had asked for, promising to take care of it after they got to Crowd. Our girl bravely picked Roll up and decided to carry him. The girl was super apologetic about it, but it was the only solution she could come up with. Thinking about it, from now on, she'll get to hug Roel at least twice every time they're in the carriage. The heroes spent the rest of their time in the carriage. They were almost at the Crowd estate. Noticing Roel's deep worry, Ramilla figured he was stressing about her family. Suddenly, the carriage stopped, and as soon as Milady stepped outside, the butler announced someone had arrived. The unexpectedly appearing Siberi was really curious how his sister managed to propose to the master. It seemed like her brother didn't see her beauty. That's exactly how the girl managed to propose. First impressions were key for the Crowd family, and as their representative, Siberi came to meet him personally. Peeking into the carriage, the young man introduced himself as the one assigned to escort Master Roel. He's deeply honored to meet someone like Roel Arnon. Turns out, the Viscount noticed how much she and her sister looked alike. Feeling the carriage stop, Army panicked and ran outside to see what was going on. Siberi recognized her as Lord Roel's little sister and asked her to call him Big Brother. Inside the Roel estate, everyone was worried about how the head of the Crowd family would receive them, and if he was in a good mood. It was clear from the start that the lady and lord weren't just anybody. The Shield of the West, Shale Crowd, and the Spear of the West, Riera Crowd, greeted the estate's new guests with honor. Despite his obvious nerves, Roel Arnon stood tall and greeted his wife's parents. He was accompanied by his sister, Lady Army Arnon. Lady Riera had heard, of course, that the lord had a younger sister, but it was still a surprise to see her. Just then, Ramilla burst into the room, yelling for her mother to leave the tired people alone. She suggested Mom just ask everything she wants to know tomorrow and relax a bit today. But a nasty look crossed the old lady's face, like she couldn't understand why she should stop. Trembling with fear of her awesomeness, Roel apologized for not teaching his sister proper greetings. Not getting why everyone was reacting like that, Riera just wanted to say that Army was way cuter than she thought. The whole rest of lunch, Lady Riera and Sir Chale were fussing over the girl like she was their own daughter. Even though there'd been a misunderstanding earlier, Sir Roel was grateful Ramilla had stood up for his sister. Seeing her chance to score some points, the heroine said she didn't need thanks, since she thought of Army as family. Family, bound by law, so the girl would never be separated from the Viscount. Out of nowhere, Dad brought up the wedding vow ceremony and suggested they do it tomorrow. The next day, Ramilla met her fiancé first thing in the morning, showing up before him in a brand new look. Mr. Roll was kind of flustered by how gorgeous she looked, but he managed to compliment her. First off, he wanted to know what this Crowd family's wedding vow ritual thing was all about. Throwing open the doors to a dark cellar, she promised to explain everything once they were downstairs. Roll was about to ask for help getting down there, but Ramilla reminded him she's a Crowd knight. She lifts like 400 pounds in training, so she told her fiancé to just trust her. Suddenly realizing this could be dangerous, she finally understood why the main characters were always so careful. Still, she kept going, shaking off the scary thoughts. Then her foot slipped. Ramilla fell and went tumbling down, barely managing to save Roel. Actually, it worked out better. They got down there super quick, and she got him back in his chair. Luckily, the Viscount was okay, but he had no idea there was this massive underground cavern under the mansion. The first Count, who founded the Crowd family, was responsible for the feudal lords and vassals' rebellion. They say he moved around a lot because of attacks from neighboring countries and pressure from the royal family. Rumor has it the Count, betrayed by the vassals he trusted, hid in this underground cave. Obviously, future generations should know the suffering of their ancestors. But Roll didn't get why the ceremony was held in this place. The first Count didn't come to this cave alone. A girl followed him, a slave knight who'd been told to run. Thanks to the Count, she went from slave to knight, and now considered it her duty to protect him. The fact that the Crowd family ancestor gave her a name, he himself saw as just a paycheck she was due. The Count, in his one and only form, was home to the girl, and she couldn't leave that home. And that slave knight was, in fact, the first Countess. According to Ramiel, drinking the groundwater here means sharing all the hardships together, and it's also where the Count decided to marry. Roel only agreed to go through with the ceremony once he knew it meant they'd be husband and wife afterward. Seeing his face turn red, the girl chugged her water too, hoping it was alcohol. Everything seemed fine, except Roel was convinced everyone thought they'd just shared a sneaky kiss. Next up in the wedding ritual, sharing a meal together. Seeing the bottle of wine, the Viscount Sir was stoked, since he used to drink all the time. The reason? Booze was always part of the battlefield experience. Even though there were drinking scenes in the original story, Ramilla never knew he was into it. During the meal, the Lord inquired if there'd be a separate wedding ceremony, and turns out, there would be in a year. After living happily as husband and wife for a few hundred days, they could throw a celebration, honoring the family traditions. Since the first Countess was a former slave, there was tons of judgment, so that's how the tradition started. Alright, so the heroes just got their marriage registered, and that's way more important than some fancy wedding ceremony. First, the heroine decides to raise a toast, knowing there's still one last ritual to get through. Holding hands and sleeping the whole night together. That's the final ritual for newlyweds. A little while later, Roel called out to Ramilia, but she was already turned away and sound asleep. Truth is, she was just faking the snoring to avoid feeling super awkward. Deciding not to waste the moment, Roel thanked her, saying he was about to completely fall apart before meeting her. The Viscount had become a guy who couldn't even hold a sword, and he thought it was game over for his pathetic life. He was so obsessed with getting back on his feet, he forgot about the people who mattered, and he would have lost them if not for Ramilia. So, just by showing up in his miserable life, the heroine saved Lord Roel from drowning in a swamp of despair. Dude didn't know what to say to even begin to thank her, but his gratitude was off the charts. Ramila choked back tears, barely holding it together. Of course, she'd do anything for the man she loved. No doubt about it, Lord Roel looked just like an angel when he was sleeping. Only next to him did she feel real relief, finally able to drift off into a peaceful sleep. The next morning, Coral came to check on her mistress, while her fiancé was suddenly called away by his father. Glancing at the bed, the maid wondered if anything had happened last night. After all, Lady Ramilla had been reading tons of romance stories the day before the ceremony, like she was studying up on it. Carl figured it was because her mistress was inexperienced, even though they'd read those stories together. But now she realized they just held hands all night and slept. After their chat, the heroine headed to meet her mother, who'd suddenly called her in. Meanwhile, the lady was sending letters to her vassals, spreading the news about the marriage vows. Truth is, nobody knew how the vassals would react if Ramilia, who never cared about suitors, suddenly got married. First thing everyone's gonna want to know is, who the hell did she pick for a husband? Lord Roel, just like Riera, is from the capital, and the vassals might not be too happy about that. 25 years ago, when Lady Crowd first joined the family, things weren't easy for her either. One day, the vassal ladies stormed the estate and first invited Riera to a tea party. Back then, she was young and thought it was some kind of welcoming ceremony, but they did it on purpose, just to mock and ignore the lady from the capital during tea. After all that, Riera slammed down her cup, drew her sword, and even flipped the table. It was only after she was waving that sword around, defending herself, that the vassal ladies shut their traps. You should have seen Ramilia's dad's face when he came running, thinking something serious was going down. It was noisy outside, so he went to check it out. But what he saw made him realize his wife was nuts. But after that day, the vassals who were there vanished. And just in case, Riera asked to warn Roel about the tea party. After telling the master everything in detail, the heroine begged him to prepare himself mentally. Noticing the count looked unwell, Ramil figured there was something in the novel related to his social circle. She used to not care about stuff like this, but not anymore. Everything changed after meeting him. It's because they're a couple, but it was more a fear of Roel's rather than a burden. Because of these new circumstances, he admitted he used to have dealings with nobles. Once, a long time ago, Viscount came to the noble's nest. It was spacious, and he heard that many nobles had arrived. Since it was his first time being invited, he had to attend. Plus, Viscount Orm insisted on it. Derek greeted him happily at the entrance, confirming that Master Roel was a real looker. Once he finally got inside, surrounded by high society, he saw a ton of people. Luckily, the Viscount was drinking, 'cause some knights don't touch the stuff. Either way, after the war, everyone wanted to tie one on. But there weren't many who didn't. People kept showing up, but Roel did everything he could to avoid them. But out of nowhere, Viscount Roel Aaron was introduced to the guests as the guy who won him this war. The nobles were cooler than he expected. Everyone was happy to meet him and thought he was a hero. But then Derek got a report and had to take off for a bit. So Roel decided to step out onto the balcony to get some air, wondering why everyone else was getting hammered. He could hear voices from above, so he decided to listen in on what they were saying. Dude was floored when he heard they thought inviting the centurion was just a show for Count Derek. Even the highborn guests, fear etched on their faces, shook the commoner's hand. They labeled him a slave, a bastard, a man stripped of everything that mattered. Just a minute ago, they were laughing and chatting. Talk about showing their true colors. Completely stunned by what he'd just witnessed, the young master decided he had to leave, like now. He felt sick to his stomach and hoped Count Derek would understand why he had to head back. Against his will, Roel overheard Derek desperately trying to weasel out of paying for the knight's medical treatment. The knight who'd protected him. He was flipping out because the knight dared to ask for medical expenses from his lord, just because he had a broken arm. In that moment, Roel couldn't believe this was the same Count, the kind Derek who'd greeted him at the entrance. It was a seriously messed up way to treat a guy who'd gotten hurt protecting him. Convinced that all nobles were the same, Roel realized he just didn't belong there. After everything Ramila overheard, she thought he saw her as one of them. But the master trusted her, the one who showed up during the worst times of his life and helped him out. Usually, instead of helping people going through it, folks just turn away. So Ramila suggested he trust the people she trusts. Sure, there are some people who really get on her nerves, but most of them are good people. The girl had a good eye, so she didn't let any creeps get close. Still, she was ready to drop the whole thing if Roel got worried, even a little bit. But the Viscount said it wasn't necessary, and judging by his face, he was definitely pumped. He promised to do everything he could to not screw up the Crowd family's reputation. With that, Ramila decided she needed to meet with Carol ASAP, leaving the master to himself. Realizing it was because of him, Roel was sure anybody would be pissed if someone just grabbed their hand like that. He knew the girl was mad about his rudeness, but holding her hand actually made him feel relieved, somehow. First things first, if this is supposed to be a tea party, the main thing is going to be the conversation. Not being much of a talker himself, the Viscount was worried about screwing up in front of the guests. Instead of stressing, he decided to go all in and dig up dirt on the opposition. To win this battle, he needed to find someone who knew the lowdown on the young nobles. When Saberi heard someone was trying to mess with Master Roel, he figured it was total BS. His sister was just guessing. But one thing was clear. These guys were planning to attack the master. Of course, Kraid wasn't in any danger, but she came to warn him they needed to prep ahead of time. Someone wants Viscount Arnon to fall, but the question is, who would dare mess with a hero of the Empire? Doesn't matter who it is. Seabury didn't think it'd matter since his sister's with Roel. A guy with insane talent makes everyone else feel like they're nothing. A straight-up monster just laughs at his opponents with his sword slung over his shoulder and wins. Before long, Seabury Crowd was told Sir Roel Ascart was asking permission to come in. The Viscount had a chat And luckily, he managed to dig up a bunch of useful intel. Family looks out for each other, so Saberi wouldn't hold anything back for his brother. And taking care of Amy? That's just another natural skill for the second eldest brother. Since Roel's her first big bro, it's only natural Amy sees Saberi as her second. He always dreamed of being a good brother and having a little sister. But the second Lady Ramiel came up. Mr. Crowd made it clear they're not siblings, just strangers to each other. What he meant was, he wanted the youngest, so he could finally feel like an older brother. Meanwhile, Army's mom was pacing the room, agonizing over what the best thing to do was. While she was figuring out what to wear, Carol came into the room, assuming the girl was already waiting for her. The maid suggested she have dinner with the Count and Madame tonight, since she hadn't eaten with them in a while, and they were really looking forward to it. Doubt instantly filled Army's eyes. She thought she'd just be annoying them. Just as the girl decided to eat alone, her two brothers came into the room to have dinner with her. Since Saberi had dinner with a lady yesterday, Carol insisted she was having dinner with Madame and the Count today. But even that didn't faze the brothers. They were just gonna head to their parents' place as a trio. However, the second they came to ask permission for dinner, Madame Rira immediately refused. Or rather, she refused Saberi. But those two were allowed to go in. With the young masters okay, Sir Roel and his sister went to see the Countess for a private chat. Meanwhile, another kid from the Crowd family caught up with Carol for a little talk. Out of nowhere, Ramilla brought up Viscount Orm, reminding us he's still hanging around. Knowing it'd get back to her, a maid let slip that he showed up yesterday, but the lady didn't bother to grace him with her presence. While our girl was tied up for a bit, Orm made the most of being in such a prime location. He was picking up supplies for his research at the crowd markets, which are bigger than anything back in the capital. Plus, beast folk goods get here faster than anywhere else. Now, after taking down some monsters, the guy was planning to snag some magic stones without breaking a sweat. His only hope was that these stones would give his research the kickstart it needed. Even though it's just a hunch, Orm's convinced that a magic stone is absolutely crucial for Roel's recovery. So, Ramilia promised to give him as much as he needed, but he forgot these stones had to be collected before they could be sold. Turns out, the Crowd family's been releasing them for ages. There's probably still some stockpiled somewhere. That news got Orm stoked. Finding a stone like that in the capital is like pulling a star out of the sky. If it weren't for Ramilia, he'd have blown all his cash buying magic stones. Instead of cash, she suggested he use this ring, 'cause buying lab equipment was gonna cost a fortune. The ring she just gave him is a signet ring from the Crowd family. It lets him buy anything he wants on Crowd family property. Orm was beyond grateful. Now he actually had something to show Lady Ramilia. Glancing at the medical research, she was just worried she wouldn't understand any of it. The first day, Roel's legs were paralyzed because his aura vanished. The guy was complaining about pain on day 3, but luckily it died down quick. By day 7, he had strength back, but refused to eat. Said he felt a sense of loss, which was worrying. Seeing the original report, Ramilla suddenly realized something fishy was going on. The conclusion said the patient couldn't recall anything that happened on the day of the incident. It was almost like a chunk of his aura got ripped away during the aura outburst. According to Orm, besides the memories of the day connected to the aura, the guy still remembers his friends. The attempt on Baron Dallas and Viscount Orm, and the unidentified dudes in black hoods. And now, Roel's lost memories. The heroine realized this wasn't in the original story, not at all. She thought knowing the original plot would make things easy, but turns out she's missing pieces. The Crowd estate was also a place that never even got a mention in the original novel. Ramilla figured she just needed to try harder to make sure Roel didn't screw up and actually ended up happy. She had to work her butt off to make sure they got a happy ending. Besides, the girl was starting to think it wasn't a coincidence she remembered her past life. That morning, while Roel was busy doing his thing, Lady Ramilla showed up to have breakfast with him. He'd been reading books on medicine, history, stuff like that, and even books written in some ancient language. He was doing it all for the guests who were about to visit Crowd, studying up on histories they'd all enjoy. When she found out, she was scared to even think he'd been sitting there all night. Roel knew he was pushing himself too hard, but this tea party felt like a mission he'd taken on for the first time in ages. He really wanted to nail it, but most of the time, Ramilla didn't even care what he thought. In that case, there wasn't much she could do except suggest they read books together. The Crow family protects their own, making sure nobody suffers alone. And since Roel was part of the family, as his wife, Lady Ramilla, felt she had to help him with everything. Time flew by reading, and as night fell, Roel noticed the girl had drifted off. She must have been exhausted, so he decided to wrap things up before she woke. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and stretched, wondering how long she'd been out. At that moment, Roel did the same, apologizing for accidentally falling asleep while reading. She was relieved she wasn't the only one who dozed off, especially since he hadn't slept all night. Meanwhile, on the road to Crow, a nobleman was thinking about how long it had been since he'd last visited. The next day, after steeling himself, Viscount Arnen stood before the noble guests. They figured a battlefield hero like him would make a hell of an impression. Among the guests invited to the Crowd estate were Mr. Baman and Sir Tian. Introducing himself as Lady Ramil's husband, Sir Roel said he was counting on their support down the line. Furthermore, he'd prepared small gifts for the guests. Might not be much, but he wanted to give them out. They're all different sizes, and the contents inside vary from one another. Opening his gift, Baman received a book on medicine he'd been waiting over 3 years for. Roel had heard the man was interested in medicine and prepared a book from an Eastern kingdom. You can't imagine how grateful Baman was that he'd been given such a valuable item. Looks like the Viscount's doing pretty well. But not everyone at the table was talking. One nobleman's face had changed the moment Sir Roel showed up at the tea party. Carlos, from the Maram family, was a guy with a real passion for fencing. Carlos played the sick card and asked if he could go for a walk to clear his head. Baman told the boss to chill, figuring his buddy just got seasick on the trip. Tien piped up, saying it probably wasn't seasickness, but something to do with Lady Ramilla. Roel already knew the guy was always dropping by to see Lady Ramilla during meetings, and for years he'd been visiting the county solo, showing up with tons of gifts. Good old Carlos didn't just shower Ramilla with presents, he hooked up everyone around her too. It seemed like everyone wanted to jump down Tien's throat for his opinion. After hearing the whole story, Roel was seriously grateful for the heads up. The tea party wrapped up, guests scattered until dinner. But the main man was still reeling. He was wrestling with this weird feeling, because Ramilla hadn't mentioned Sir Carlos's advances. This guy's got the looks, the swordsmanship, and on top of that, he's the heir to a count's estate. But Roel couldn't offer her anything, not having either of those things. Now, the only question eating at him was, what's the deal between Ramilla and Carlos? No doubt, if they were tight, he probably already popped the question. Looking out the window, Roel suddenly spotted Carlos, and after squinting, noticed he was holding a ring. Thinking their master was awesome, Baman and Tian were flattered he even considered their tastes. Come to think of it, Carlos didn't even show up for the meal. Tian almost ruined the vibe because of him. They both thought Master Roel looked gloomy, but they were lucky he didn't take offense. Hearing the whispers, Lady Ramilla snuck up so fast, the guys fell on the floor from the shock. She was dying to know what Tian said that suddenly made the Viscount so down in the dumps. So, this kid says they told him about Carlos, like how he was always visiting Lady Ramilla. I mean, Carlos is totally into her, and Mr. Roel must have picked up on that, right? Tian was busting his ass trying to prove that whenever they hung out, all this dude did was hit on Miss Crowd. Plus, he was always showing up with gifts and sending her tons more. But Ramilla wasn't buying it, so the kid decided to tell her what went down today. Even though Mr. Roel was a perfect host at the tea party, giving everyone attention, Carlos was totally out of it all day. It's probably because Ramilla's getting married, duh. So our girl figures she'll just ask him straight up. No beating around the bush. The guys were bracing for a beatdown, but Lady Ramilla's been softer since she tied the knot. After their chat, she went straight to Carlos, and the dude opened the door with tears in his eyes. But seeing Milady in his doorway, a smile crept across his face, and he figured he'd find out what she wanted. Cutting right to the chase, Lady Crowd asked him point blank if he was into her. Since she's got a thing for someone else, and she's already married to Roel, she just wanted Carlos to give it up. Laughing, the Lord asked if he could ask why she was spouting such nonsense. Once it came out that Tian was to blame for everything, Carlos decided to take care of him, but Ramilla wanted to finish him herself. Remembering his tears, the girl figured he must have had some kind of misunderstanding with Roel because of Tian. Their conversation was interrupted by the Viscount. He'd arrived at the same time as Lady Ramilla, and judging by what he overheard, he wanted to know about that ring Carlos was holding earlier. Carlos was caught between a rock and a hard place, and they were both demanding he tell the truth. He really didn't want to say it, but that ring already belongs to someone else. Right before all this, when Carlos bailed on the tea party for some air, he was trying to figure out where to go. Out of nowhere, he senses this young girl showing up, wanting to know what's wrong. So the guy tells her he's got something he needs to tell someone, but he can't track them down. All fired up to help, Amy's ready to find this person, just as long as he gives her a name. So Carlos hands her the message and asks her to deliver it to someone super important. Turns out, the girl knows this person and takes off. promising to get it to her right away. Now, sure that this girl's gonna show, the guy doesn't want to hide anymore. Later that night, seeing Karel with his own eyes, Carlos felt this pull in his heart and just hugged her tight. They were supposed to meet up on the weekend, but he got a chance to see her today. Even so, Carol's worried he'll get busted if he keeps pulling stunts like this. She couldn't bring herself to tell the lady anything and came to finally try the ring on her finger. Carlos wasn't demanding she marry him or get engaged right away. He just wanted to give her a gift. But he should have known, even if he later told her to take it off, Carol never would. So, the reason he was always visiting the mansion was to see Carol. And as for the gifts, if there were a lot of them, he figured at least a few would go to the maid. Clearly, Carlos was keeping the relationship a secret because he didn't think he'd get permission to marry her. But even if he couldn't get permission and had to leave home, the dude was planning on staying with Carol. Being totally irresponsible, he wasn't even thinking about the fact that they might not be happy in the end. The thing is, Carlos is the Earl's only kid, and Carol is a fallen noblewoman who sold her title. A relationship between them would definitely be a problem in aristocratic society. Hoping he'd get it, Ramila explained it'd be better if they split, seeing as how this whole thing was going to complicate Karel's life. It was food for thought, like, if things went south, was Carlos just going to bail and head back home? Right then, breaking up felt like the best call. While they were still on good terms, she was sure the first thing he needed to do was figure out how to break the news to his folks. The only thing keeping Carlos from losing it was the chance he might get permission. That calmed him down. After their talk, she decided to check in on Mr. Roll and make sure he was doing okay. She just remembered that super serious face she'd been putting on for him earlier. As soon as she said she was worried she'd bum him out, the guy said the opposite was true. Thing is, he totally misread the situation, thinking Ramila was into Carlos. But for some reason, he didn't just ask. Deciding to tell the truth without bragging, she said she'd never actually dated anyone before. I bet she'll never find anyone who could actually love her, even in the future. When Roel heard that, he immediately corrected her, saying there's definitely someone out there for her. Lady Ramila's strong, plus she's unbelievably caring and beautiful, and deserves to be admired. Learning that he thought she was a good person, she figured it was a confession and thanked him. Before leaving, Roel wanted to invite her to the bedroom, but he was afraid she might get the wrong idea. Still, he decided Ramila had suffered enough today because of him too. Just like the heroine, wanting to talk more, he decided to call it a night. The next day, Ramila's first stop was her husband's room, but Viscount Orm was already there. The doctor arrived because it was the day for the medical checkup. Looking at Roel, she saw a strange sphere in his hands, an artifact that checks the state of the Uro. When it was all over, Oro didn't react at all, and Roel just looked defeated. Orm brought up the dream thing while asking questions, but the master was adamant he didn't have sleep problems. Based on the results, his health is improving, and he looks better than when he was living in the capital. Now that Carlos has figured everything out, Roel can finally get some sleep. Suddenly, he felt something crawling up his legs and instantly threw off the blanket to make sure it wasn't a bug. That's when it hit the master. He realized he just felt his leg itching. Clutching his chest from the stabbing pain, Roel panicked and lost it. Orm had already warned him that this was a common syndrome for people with paralyzed nerves. He tried to hold on a little longer, gritting his teeth, telling himself it would get easier soon. Thinking about Orm's question, Roel decided it was best not to tell him about it right now. He blamed it all on exhaustion, said it was just a reaction from prepping for the stupid tea ceremony. The important thing was, everyone seemed happy, or so he thought, so he figured he shouldn't say anything. Right now, Army looked way brighter than the day Siberi Crowd first met her. I mean, she was bright that first day too. She just wasn't getting the attention everyone gives her now. While they were figuring out where to go next, Siberi barely had time to react when he saw that cart barreling towards them. Luckily, the girl wasn't hurt. She was okay, but she definitely heard someone begging for help. Asking her brother for help, Army was sure she heard a kid's voice coming from that cart, begging for help. Just hearing her call him Big Brother for the first time, the brave Siberi took off after them without a second thought. The cart hadn't gotten far, and he was on the coachman in a flash, ordering him to stop immediately. As soon as the horses were reined in, Mr. Crowd confidently decided to search the thing. Spotting that innocent puppy in the cage, he demanded the coachman show him his animal trading license. See, on their land, animal trading was only allowed for folks who actually had the proper permit. Siberi Crowd figured the guy just didn't know the laws, which were put in place because of animal hunters. Deciding to hear the full story back at the castle, he told his guys to grab the perp and haul him in. Surprisingly, Army was convinced that this little guy was the one who'd been calling out for her help. It was kinda hard to believe that this little wolf cub was actually some kind of prisoner. After a wolf showed up at the castle, Riera and Shale were sure their son had finally lost it, dragging him home. Taking the blame, Army figured she'd been too stubborn with her brother, all because she was so worried. That's when Crowd's parents immediately changed their tune, deciding one wolf wouldn't be a problem. The weird thing was, Army heard its voice. No animal talks, so he's probably a captive of some kind. So, Ramila decided to talk to him too, and asked him to change into a human. But Army wanted to get him some clothes first. Turns out, this little dude is the same age as Army, and a total shy guy. Everyone here's cool, so Ramila told the kid he could just do whatever felt right. With Army giving the okay, the little guy calmed down and finally showed his true form, with the ears and tail. Through his rescuer, he told them his name was Luan, and then dropped a bomb that made their hair stand on end. He was heading to the Cloud territory with his family, but they got separated when monsters attacked. When Luan was all alone, he got snatched. And now he's freaking out, because he doesn't know what he'll do if he can't find his family. With tears in her eyes, Army tried to reassure the kid that he was safe now. First off, Ramila suggested they find the beast folk and hand the little guy over to his parents, who they also needed to track down. Lady Riera put Army in charge of taking care of the kid, seeing as he only trusted her. The girl needed her brother's okay to do this, so she wasted no time trying to convince him. She wanted to help Luan find his family, just like her brother had saved her life. Without much hesitation, Lord Royal backed his sister and decided to go along with it, seeing as Army saved the kid. That evening, Ramila interrupted the Lord to talk, pulling him away from his reading. This time, Roll was wearing glasses, and damn, he looked even more amazing than before. He wanted to study the beast people, but the small print was killing him, so he put on his specs. Actually, Roel's digging his new family. Everyone's nice to him, which is why our girl didn't know what to do. Being a pro at relationship building, Karel decided to give her some advice. Don't drag your feet on that first kiss, and start with a massage. Figuring the Lord was super stressed, the girl said she was ready to help him chill out. Following the maid's advice, she decided to give him a little massage so he could enjoy her touch. Even if it wasn't his thing, Roel had a hard time saying no to the best masseuse, approved by Lady Riera herself. Turns out, her massage was actually killer, but the young master was feeling super awkward. Suddenly remembering he had to check up on Army, the Viscount told the girl to knock it off. Thinking she couldn't stop there, Ramila panicked and tried to hold him back. But it was too late. The heroine just got shut down, like she was trying to kiss her old man husband. Only once he was back in his own room did Roel feel safe enough to finally breathe. Out of nowhere, he felt that same pain from before, even though he wasn't nearly as tired today. Honestly, he'd been living carefree these past few days, and now he felt like he was about to crash. Amazingly, just the thought of Ramila maybe barging in caused a miracle. He could move his legs. The next morning, Lady Ramila was dead set on having breakfast with her husband. Her morning ramblings about their first kiss were getting out of control. She was about to show him the difference between today's Ramila and yesterday's. Before she could enter her husband's room, she ran into Orm, who was just leaving. He said he had business with the master, and Roel had only called him in for a minute. Even though the master was trying to act totally innocent, she could hear the lies in his head. Under pressure, Orm caved and took her to the lab, where he told her about Roel's illness. He was hiding it because the master couldn't stand being a burden to everyone, and asked him to keep quiet. Orm was planning to finish making the medicine before he said anything. Once he knew about Roel's condition, he intended to finish it ASAP and tell Ramila everything. Even though the cauldron reeked, the medicine's effect could restore lost aura. They used this kind of medicine on battlefields because it has a unique effect on the Northern Knight's aura. But Orm managed to figure out the side effect of the potion the Northerners were using. Of course, the medicine he cooked up has 0 side effects. He cut out the herbs the Northerners used and swapped them out for local ones. Even if Roel doesn't feel better right away, it's a win if his treatment improves after this. Orm was planning on brewing the medicine back in the capital, but a tight budget made it impossible. Even though he's pretty sure there won't be any side effects, it'd be good to test that out. The Viscounts already tested it a few times, and there were no side effects, just a boost of energy. Ramila was right. They needed someone with an aura to test it out. That way they'll know the results in a month. Since Orm already drank the medicine, the heroine agreed without a second thought and demanded the potion. All right, time to test this miracle cure. But the girl got cold feet right before chugging it. Even though it looked nasty enough to kill a man, Ramila downed that potion in one go. First effect? Projectile vomiting. which apparently meant it was the good stuff. Totally freaked out, Ramila suggested someone else should be the guinea pig next time. Looking at the sky, Lady Rira saw a sudden lightning strike, like something big just went down. A week later, the heroine showed up to give Roel the new medicine, packing a ton of sweets and pastries. This new medicine was cooked up by Viscount Orm, who heard about it from some northerners. This medicine wasn't exactly urgent, but still needed to be taken as soon as possible. Wanting to make damn sure Roel drank it, Ramila asked him to do it right then and there. Hearing that 1 cup of this stuff cost as much as a year's worth of living expenses for a whole town, the guy gulped down every last drop. Felt like my whole body seized up from the bitter taste, but luckily, Ramila handed me a candy right away. The girl sighed in relief, since Roel didn't notice anything weird. She was taking the medicine too. Testing wrapped up a week ago, but the experiment needed more subjects. Turns out her whole family was roped into the drug trial. Ramila kept it a secret because she thought her husband would flip if he found out. Truth is, the Viscount was bummed she wasn't looking out for herself, but he totally got where she was coming from. So, he was genuinely grateful to her and her family, promising to give it his all to get better. Even though Luan promised to get to bed early, tonight he's back at the window, worried his family forgot about him. Trying to convince him that his folks might show up even at dawn. Army was trying to get the kid to sleep. Before bed, she decided to pray for Luan, hoping his parents would be found, begging God not to take them like hers. Looking at this, even though it's late, Saberi decided to search for his parents himself. After taking his meds, Roel started feeling a pain a few days ago, and it's been happening more often. The pain itself is weak, but it's constant, so he told us to ignore it. We had 2 choices, and first off, Orm suggested reducing the pain by lowering his dosage. Against all advice, Roel wasn't ready to give up just yet. He decided to keep taking the medicine. Maybe it sounds dumb, but he thought the frequent pains would eventually pay off. One time, he almost lost, doing everything by the book, but he trusted his gut and won the fight. Since it was the intuition of a war hero, Orm agreed to do things the way Lord Roel wanted. Out of nowhere, he asked how things were going with Lady Ramiel. He didn't know the details, just curious. Just in case, Orm said there's no guarantee that anyone's favor will last forever. What he really wanted to know was, what does Roel consider a favor, a gift, or something truly everlasting? That evening, Carell spotted the Viscount arriving and thought about telling the mistress, but he came to her instead. First thing, he wanted to know what Ramila likes, because he wants to get her a gift. If this maid tells him what the mistress's twisted tastes are, and anyone finds out, she'll be buried behind the mansion. What Ramila likes is swords and swordplay, which she's good at, but she doesn't care for jewelry. Still, it's not so much what the gift is, but that it's given from the heart. Carell's main advice to Roel was that a handmade gift would carry a lot of weight. Even though the master wasn't great at that kind of thing, he'd still be happy to get a handmade gift, so he decided to do it. He spent the evening on business, just like Roel figured. It's way easier to work in the quiet. Thanks to Ramila, he finally had some personal space, since she let him use her study. Taking Carell's advice to heart, the master calmly embroidered inscriptions on handkerchiefs, figuring it was the best gift. It was day 3 of the search, but even the next day, all attempts came up empty. Either way, they might be able to get some intel in the Beastfolk village. Before long, they finally arrived at the Sween Beastfolk village. The knights had encountered many of them, but few had seen their settlement. Ditching his cowardly room, Master Saberi jumped off the cliff and told them to figure it out themselves. First thing he did, he checked out a house, where a girl answered. Surprised to see a human. Begging for help, the master explained he was looking for a gray werewolf who'd shown up recently. If you're talking about a gray werewolf, 2 of them were here 2 days ago. 2 scary gray werewolves definitely stopped by the Beastfolk village. According to the girl, it sounded like they were saying they were looking for their son. The werewolves said they fought some monsters, but then their son vanished. Luan told the same story. They booked it northwest, to a monster-infested zone, dead certain their kid got snatched by those things. Once all the intel was in, the knights finally dragged themselves to the village, totally spent. With the investigation here wrapped, Saberi laid out 2 options on the table. Either one of us sprints for backup, while the rest of us hunker down in the village, or we all head northwest ourselves, straight into that monster-filled hellhole. The reason for the rush was Saberi's pity for the little dude who lost his folks. According to Luan, his family wanted to relocate and settle in Crowd territory. There's no other reason to risk crossing the border like that. Only Crowd County is cool with beast people. It's the Earl's duty to protect his lands and people, which is why Saberi's pushing so hard. Meanwhile, high up in the northwestern mountains, Lubel was wounded, trying to escape some seriously bloodthirsty monsters. Even knowing Luan was definitely alive, he still beat himself up, just because he was so damn scared for him. Terrified something might happen to his son, he was ready to trade his life to keep him safe. Suddenly, the beastman realized someone was there, picking up a strong human scent and the sound of footsteps. A lord emerged from the slums, boots clacking, a knight's sword gleaming brightly in its scabbard. Realizing he was a knight, Lubel was about to attack when the lord suddenly asked if they were Luan's parents. Finally finding the kid's parents, Sir Sibley introduced himself and said their son was under the protection of Crowd County. Worried sick about his kid, Lubel couldn't hold back tears of relief, thanking the gods their son was still alive. Then, he decided to call out to his people, even though it seemed like they were the only werewolves around. Turns out, they'd spread out across the area, but now their search time just got a whole lot shorter. A werewolf family reunion? That's a bright, happy moment, man. Hearts filled with joy and warmth. To celebrate, Count Shale Crowd suggested a massive dinner, moving things to the dining hall. At the table, the guy suddenly brought up, why? The beast folk decided to come to Crowd in the first place. Truth is, things in the kingdom of Morno went downhill fast when the new queen took over. She was trying to kick Princess Piari out and make her own son the heir to the throne. So, the nobles from the dead queen's faction and the current queens are at each other's throats. Back in the day, she showered the beast folk with cash and food, trying to buy their support. But when the economy tanked, they stopped sponsoring the beast folk altogether. According to Luan's mom, Morno's become unlivable. It's heading for disaster any day now. Shale had heard about the problems in the kingdom since Queen Shin took over, but he didn't realize it was this bad. So now this pack of werebeasts wants to sign up as soldiers for Crowd County. 'Cause, you know, werewolves make killer defenders. Didn't sound like a terrible idea, so Riera promised to find them a spot on the border after they ate. 1 second ago, Luan was stoked, but he held his breath when he heard they'd be leaving the castle soon. The kid finally found his parents, but now all he wanted was for Army to go with them too. He flat out refused to leave the castle without the girl, acting like a little crybaby. That's when Roel grabbed his wife's hand for the first time, wanting to know if there was any way to stop him. He didn't think separating the kids was going to do anyone any good. As for worries about living with humans, the people of Crowd live in harmony with the werebeasts. Since they wanted to be soldiers for Crowd County, Ramilla offered them a chance to be the castle's protectors instead. She let him stay here for a month to start, figuring it was the best way to avoid upsetting the kids. Problem solved, and Army liked it too. She's still just a kid after all. That night, Riera wanted to know why her hubby was staring at the map so long, figuring he wanted to expand their territory. On the map was a tiny patch of land between the Kingdom of Mornon and the County of Crowd. Suddenly, Lord Shale got the urge to take over that territory. Like we said before, the soldiers on the border stopped getting paid. No surprise there's chaos outside the country if the Queen's causing it inside. The couple decided to start conquering territories after their son-in-law recovered. Just then, Lady Piari got an urgent summons from Her Majesty. She was expecting the princess in the garden. On the way to the garden, Milady tried talking to a servant, but she just hurried her along. Nobody here listens to Princess Piari or gives a damn about what she wants. The second she showed up for tea, the lady practically shoved her into greeting Princess Antonia. After seating Piari, the queen sized her up, thinking how clueless she was about why she'd been summoned. Truth was, everyone wanted her to go somewhere, and Antonia knew she was acquainted with Count Crowd. It wasn't long before Orm finally got his hands on it. The new aura meter. It looked pretty much the same as the old one, but this baby measures aura values below 100%. The principle's the same, so Roel was also on the edge of his seat waiting for the results. It was over almost instantly, and Orm didn't have good news to report. Just then, the aura meter in Roel's hands lit up, bathing the whole room in a bright glow. Staring at this miracle, all the heroes could think was, did it actually work? So bottom line, Mr. Roel does have an aura after all, which means rehabilitation is possible. Just because doesn't mean the Count can get up and walk right now. He's got to go through the treatment first. That's when the hero realized that pain meant his body was actually healing. Now that he had a single shot at this, there were 3 ways his future could go. First, a full aura recovery and the ability to walk. The perfect outcome for him. Second, only a 50% aura recovery. In that case, Roel still walks, but he'd need something like a cane. And third, the minimum aura recovery, where he could only move his legs. Either way, no matter the outcome, Ramilla was ready to stick by his side. Even a few words of support from her gave the master confidence. If only the Count's legs would get back to normal as soon as possible, He and Ramilla could meet a warm spring together. Roel was grateful to her. He felt way better, all thanks to what she said. Later that night, his legs started killing him again. But remembering his wife's words, he figured he could tough it out for her. At the same time, Ramila got a bad feeling in her gut and thought something was up with her little bun. Without a second thought, she bolted to her husband's bedroom. But no one answered her knocking. Hearing a heavy sigh, she burst into the room and saw Roel, whose legs were acting up again. Panicked, the master calmed her down, saying he just needed painkillers and sent her back to bed. But his wife knew he'd been suffering since that tea party. She figured out he'd hidden it from her and Viscount Orm, not wanting them to worry. But like she said before, they're a couple, and they shouldn't be keeping secrets from each other. Promising not to do it again, Roel asked if his lady would accept a little something he wanted to give her. This was his first time doing anything like this, and he thought it kinda sucked. But he still gave the gift to the girl. The master's always been on the receiving end, never giving anything back to anyone. Since he's stuck inside, it's the only thing he can give his wife. Such a soft, pretty scarf with Ramilla Crowd embroidered on it. It couldn't be bad. Ramilla planned to start building a display case for Roel's gift after waking up the next day. But that was just a pipe dream. Time flew by. Thankfully, Roel's rehab was paying off big time. He managed to get on his feet, and this time, he crossed the balance beam in exactly 32 seconds. That's way faster than last time, when he hit a record of 38 seconds. Seeing how beat he was, Ramilla went to wipe the sweat off his face. But Roel was gonna do it himself. Unable to resist the sweat trickling down his pale neck, she insisted on doing it. In this weird, seductive vibe, she felt like it was the perfect, God-sent moment for a kiss. Roel seemed to feel it too, 'cause he grabbed her hand, and they were practically gnawing at each other's lips. Just then, a bunch of loud voices. The Earl's knights popped up out of nowhere, catching them at the absolute worst time. Fidel, Kai, and Baron Dallas figured they should have waited. While they were talking, Ramilia suddenly remembered she hadn't seen Garen and Garam in ages. According to Fidel, those two took off north, where a war's about to break out, and there's money to be made. They spent the rest of the time just talking. Roel's recovery was bringing everyone closer. Honestly, Baron Dallas didn't think the young master would bounce back this fast. He ain't no doctor, but he knows busted nerves are a real pain to fix. I mean, even Orm said when he got back to the capital that the treatment wasn't gonna be easy. He was convinced that the most important factor in recovery was the patient's will. But Sir Roel's will was weakening every day. He saw himself as completely useless now. At first, he really wanted to pick up his sword. But after a while, he stopped wanting anything at all. When it was time to check on him, Orm found the master in a state of emptiness, no longer talking about the future. Roel felt like a burden, deep in debt, and only dreamed of marriage, thinking no woman could ever be happy with him. You could say it's about desire, but Orm was sure that just wanting something wasn't enough. He's got a theory he's been mulling over. Roel needs to laugh more, no question about it. After all, a person's aura is filled by their positive emotions. That's Viscount Orm's theory. This week, Army was studying imperial political dynamics with the Count. Oh, and she got praised today and treated to chef-made caramel candies. The lessons weren't tough at all, and she was eager to learn everything, especially since she was being so well taken care of. Seeing her progress, Roel was happy, but he realized how clueless he'd been when they lived in the capital. If he'd noticed this earlier, Amy could have already learned everything. Figuring the adults probably had a ton of questions, she decided to leave them alone and dragged Luan away with her. So, like his sister suggested, Roel proposed a little one-on-one dinner with his wife. On the way to the dining hall, she suddenly mentioned that everything felt so weird to her. When they first met, Roel blew her off, and nobody would have ever guessed things could turn out like this. Hearing that made him feel awkward, so he had to sincerely apologize. But if he'd agreed right away, she would have been uncomfortable, so all's well that ends well. Sometimes he wondered what would have happened if he'd never accepted her proposal. If he hadn't taken the deal, Roel's family, the ones he cared for, would have been wiped off the face of the earth, just like him. Just like in the original story, the master would have lost his mansion and ended up on the streets. He'd be wandering around, desperately searching for Orm, who'd suddenly vanished. Roel would never find him, because by then, the Viscount would already be pushing up daisies. And in the end, the novel's hero would hit rock bottom. Then, about 6 months later, winter would come, and Ermi would disappear from the story forever. But Ramilia said that even if he hadn't met her, everything would still be okay. That brought a smile to Roel's face, but he knew deep down he wouldn't be as happy as he is now. Meanwhile, the kids headed to Orm's lab, where Luan kept an eye on the men as they slaved away. Suddenly, Orm looked like he was about to faint, and the research hit a dead end. The way he put it, to get completely cured, you gotta use the magic stone the right way. He really thinks these stones are helpful for medicine? They're dangerous for people. Everyone knows these stones are only good for making artifacts. But Orm found a record about purifying magic stones. Logically, based on the material, purified magic stones are safe for people. Thing is, apparently, only a top-tier mage can purify a stone. The Viscount met with a few, but they all swore they couldn't do it. The info's solid, because the kingdom's famous medic, Mornin, left it behind. He purified the stone with some unknown power. But the problem is, he didn't say what it was. The Baron had no clue how to purify a stone that even mages couldn't handle. But he knew the stone would glow when someone with real talent held it. A purified magic stone turns white, and only in rare cases does it become transparent. While they were studying the material, Luan suddenly decided to pick up the stone that had fallen near him. Orm couldn't believe the kid was holding a perfectly purified white magic stone. It was insane, so Orm asked the boy to purify another little stone. In return, he promised to give Luan as many magic stones as he wanted, just to see him in action. Now all the boy had to do was relax and do the same thing he did last time. Taking the stone in his hands, Luan calmed down and with some unknown power, purified the magic stone. Watching this miracle, the researcher never thought a magic stone could actually be like this. It was already dinner time, but everyone was still busy with something. So Roll came to check in. Turns out, Orm's been a mess since what happened. Can't pull himself together. Almost like he's obsessed with continuing his research, grabbing the ultimate prize. The second Roll walked in, the kids freaked out and ran to hug him. Orm was actually looking for him, to tell him that thanks to Luan, they had a shot at a cure. All thanks to the magic stone, purified by Luan's powers, to be exact. That kid, a natural-born mage, was their hope. A few days later, the heroes were all together again. Riera too, even though it's weird she showed up after the last experiment. First, Orm met with Luan's parents, and realized that purification is either a beast person ability, or it's not related. The ability was one of a kind, since no beast person had ever actually purified stones. There's not a word about purification anywhere, not even a line in the original story. Orm gathered everyone to tell us about this medicine made from the old potion and the magic stone. Apparently, it can restore a shattered heart core. No real side effects, but there might be some issues when you first start taking it. Medicine made from magic stones is way stronger. Its elements are gonna clash with what's left of Roll's aura. There's a risk the boss will be in pain, but he's glowing at the thought of his aura being restored. But there are still risks. Number 1, part of his body could get paralyzed. Also, he'll constantly be starving and thirsty. His legs might give out when he's walking, and there's a decent chance of seizures. That's when Riera decided Ramile would be better off taking care of her husband herself and living with him. The moment she's been waiting for, to hold his hand all night long, is finally here. But Roel suggested she just stick to visiting him regularly. Like Riera said, if something happens to his body, help isn't always going to be immediate. It's not that he doesn't want to share a room with Ramilla. He's just embarrassed to show his weak side. That's when the master remembered his wife's words. They could show each other their weaknesses. From that moment on, he asked Ramilla to take care of him. It was a great call for everyone. Since Roel was taking this medicine for the first time, half a bottle was plenty. Ramilla freaked out that they hadn't done a test dose, but Orm explained they wouldn't get any results anyway. She was worried, even though she knew Roel was going through way worse. Even though the medicine smelled awful, the master agreed to drink it for Ramilla's sake. It tasted like regular water, but as soon as it went down, the master doubled over in excruciating pain. Even though it hurt like hell right now, he had to say how he was feeling. His legs were like stone, aching like hell, and his hands felt just as bad. Seeing him suffer like that, Ramilla just couldn't stand by and watch. She made the pain bearable, so Roel asked her not to look so sad. The instant his body completely relaxed, he closed his eyes and stopped talking. Orm totally forgot to mention he mixed the medicine with a sleeping aid, so the master could handle the intense pain without being conscious. Wiping away tears of joy, Ramilla told the doctor to get some rest, so he wouldn't overwork himself. She stayed by her husband's side until evening, and Roel worked up a serious sweat during that time. Trying to find a cloth to wipe the sweat off, she stumbled upon a whole pile of white handkerchiefs. The heroine froze, holding her breath, seeing her name embroidered by hand on every single one. The hero woke up pretty easily in the morning, but his wife couldn't hold on and fell asleep sitting there just before dawn. The rustling woke her up, and she was stoked to see Roel looking so good. Surprisingly, the dude was feeling all right. Way better than yesterday. As for his core, He couldn't really tell if anything had changed just yet. But Ramila was sure he couldn't recover in one shot. It would take constant meds. Since she had to split on some errands, she promised to be back around lunchtime. Watching her go, Roll just hoped she wasn't pushing herself too hard. Flopping back onto the bed, totally beat, she planned on sleeping till noon. She'd been up all night. Master Roll was worried she hadn't slept, but Ramila lied and talked him out of it. Suddenly, she remembered that play, The White Flower Blooming in the Temple, she'd seen recently. Back then, it made her think she could nurse someone back to health, just like the main character. But seeing Roll endure the pain, hiding it all, was getting pretty rough on her. Hoping it would all be over when she woke up, she finally closed her eyes. Days turned into nights, time flew by, and 3 weeks had already passed. But Roel wasn't getting any better. Siberi told his sister to stop wandering around the mansion and go to her room, 'cause she was starting to look scary. That bastard had pushed her too far, so Ramila jumped up and swung a punch at his jaw, but her brother dodged it. Then she threw another punch and instantly regretted even going after him. She wasn't in any shape to be fighting right now. She barely had the strength for anything. Roel first felt despair way back in his childhood, when he somehow survived a military attack. Soldiers found the kid, who'd lost his parents during the evacuation. They decided to take the boy with them, just in case his parents showed up. The food wasn't free, so Roel's camp started teaching him fencing and swordsmanship. One day, his instructor suggested he head to the capital with everyone else. This kid was more talented than all of them combined, so the captain wasn't about to leave him behind. But fate had other plans, and the captain broke his promise, disappearing and leaving Roel dreaming of their reunion. Soon, rumors started spreading that all the mercenaries who fought in the war had died. Roel, already hit with despair twice, just sank even deeper into it. That's when he decided to volunteer. Even though he was young, he was skilled with a sword. Training started tomorrow, and a soldier promised to stick with him, no matter what happened. Roel couldn't abandon everything he'd learned. He was determined to avenge the captain. First, he'd avenge his parents and the mercenaries who saved him. But then all the reasons just started to feel meaningless to him. He figured it was all pointless, after taking down countless enemies. But, starting with Amy, who was in the same boat, Roel found people he cared about and thought life was finally good. He finally had reasons to live and fight, protecting the people he loved. But then, it all came crashing down when he couldn't even stand anymore. Despite everything he'd done, they sent him home, 'cause they couldn't call him a knight anymore. Figuring he was cursed by the heavens, the hero became scared of his fate for the first time ever. As a sinner who'd spilled so much blood, he wasn't even afraid of never picking up a sword again. But if he could just get back on his feet, then he could protect the people he cared about. That's when he prayed one last time for some light to finally come into his life. Roel woke up that morning, seeing his wife next to him again. She'd been through so much because of him. He decided to lay her back down on the bed, then went to get in his wheelchair. But then, he managed to stand up. It was unbelievable, like something impossible had happened. He could walk. Roel couldn't even believe it. The fact that his aura was returning was insane. Seeing her husband standing, Ramilia jumped out of her chair, thinking she was dreaming. Roel didn't know how much, but he definitely felt better already. She was so overjoyed that she could barely hold back the tears and tackled him with congratulations. Sir Viscount was finally on the mend. She had been waiting for this day for so long. To check his condition, she immediately got Orm to come and give him an examination. The patient was doing fine, but he was experiencing a little fatigue. Still, Orm told the girl to stick with her husband, since he can't be left alone just yet. While tackling this heavy case, Lord Crowd was trying to figure out what the heck was going on in the Kingdom of Mornin. He wasn't thrilled about sticking to a peaceful policy, especially since everything happened so fast. Of course, the captain understood the Earl's feelings, but he said the new queen wanted peace. According to him, Queen Navria overcame a ton of obstacles to pave the way for peace. The country's ruler died from some unknown illness, and the new queen overthrew the heir apparent, the princess. And she rose to power despite all the opposition and resistance. Now, the captain wanted to send a peace delegation to the Earl's lands. In exchange for his agreement, he was planning on sending Princess Piari as the delegation's representative. Even though she's powerless against her stepmother, she's still first in line for the throne. Meanwhile, the Black Hood gang was running some shady experiments up north in the kingdom. Good thing for everyone, they didn't have that many magic stones. But the fact that we've got one of those Black Hoods in custody? That's intel gold. Hoping to score a whole castle full of stones for that intel, Garen and Garen hauled ass to Crowd. That trip to Crowd was rough on Princess Piari. She was sweating how she'd come across to Mornin. If she could just nail this in Crowd, The new queen promised she'd finally recognize her. Suddenly, the carriage screeched to a halt halfway there, and the girl started freaking out, thinking something was up. Turns out, the servants were planning on grabbing some grub before rolling into crowd and asked her to hang tight. While the servant went to fetch lunch, Piari wandered off a bit to stretch her legs before the meal. It was so deserted out there. Looked like they were about to hunt some wild game to cook for lunch. Out of nowhere, she stumbled upon her servants in the woods and decided to eavesdrop. She had no clue they were actually plotting the best time to offer. One guy wanted to slip her a sleeping pill in her food, and the other's job was to not screw it up. Now the princess finally realized why they sent her off with that delegation. She was pathetically happy to finally leave that place, but should have known they wouldn't let her go that easily. The only one who could help her was her uncle from Mornin. Nowhere to run, and the west was too far. So the defenseless princess realized she was gonna die right there. Turns out, the servants originally planned to do it after they crossed the border. But the plan changed, because the Crowd family sent knights to meet the princess. Desperate Piari refused to die like that, and took off running, determined to survive and cross that border. Turns out, it's way harder than she thought. The royal guard started hunting for the missing princess right away. In that moment, totally desperate and defenseless, the girl felt completely powerless. If she'd known this was gonna happen, she would have taken some fencing lessons. Her legs were killing her from trying to escape so hard, and she seriously missed her mom. All she had to do was get across the shore to reach Crowd fast. Just as Piari decided to stop wasting time and move forward, the knights found her and attacked. Her dumb, helpless look just made the knights laugh harder. They were gonna put an end to this childish game. Before dying, the girl begged them to at least tell her why the queen wanted her dead. The truth is, the princess's death will spark a war, and that war will be blamed on the county of Crowd. Start a war by killing Piari, a princess getting in the way of political moves. That was the queen's goal. The girl squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for death as the sword flashed before her. But then, an arrow slammed into the attacking knight's arm, and he dropped his sword. No doubt about it, that was Sabiri Crowd, the kingdom's protector and a fierce fighter for justice. Seeing him as her only hope, the poor princess rushed to him, begging for help. Help came instantly. Thankfully, Sabiri noticed the princess's dire situation. Judging by their clothes, he figured out her attackers were knights from the Mornin kingdom, but those inhuman bastards weren't knights at all. In the end, the Crowd family protector took down 7 of them single-handedly, with just one sword. The knights said he was from the Crowd family, and up close, he was unreal. He avoided hitting vital spots, but the knights must have been poisoned. It was like this was planned from the jump. After thanking the hero for saving her life, the girl introduced herself as Piari. Realizing she was Princess Morneau, Sabiri finally understood how messed up the Morneau knights were. The knights wanted to kill their own princess, but Sabiri couldn't leave her alone and let her go barefoot. It might not be super comfortable, but he asked her to just wait until they arrived in Crowd. But the princess was torn about whether she should go to Crowd, since she'd be the cause of a war. Not wanting to keep the truth from her savior, Piari explained why the knights were trying to kill her. If she died in Crowd territory, the county would be blamed, which is a perfect excuse to start a war. Now that she'd told him the whole truth, the girl felt a little lighter after saying it all. The princess thought he'd ditch her here, but it turned out he was expecting something like this. But then she didn't understand why he wouldn't just ditch her if he knew she was the reason for the war. Sabiri said if the princess hides, everyone will think she vanished near the border, and his family will take the fall. On top of that, the boss figured assassins were already waiting for her at the Moron border. The princess needed to face it. She wasn't getting back to the kingdom. The enemy's plan worked the second she left the palace. Right now, it's a real mess. The princess can't go back, can't hide, and can't head west. Since any of those options means death, Sabiri straight up admitted he's taking her to the Earl's mansion, not out of pity. The earldom benefits more from the princess staying alive than from her dying or disappearing without a trace. Piari wasn't sure how much help she'd be to Crowd, but she decided to do everything she could. Soon as they got to the camp, Kai's first thought was that they were injured. Sabiri politely introduced the princess of the Kingdom of Mornin, who'd had a bit of a rough time on the road. He told Kai to take care of her wounds and give her a place to rest. Nights were frigid, so Mr. Crowd gave her his cloak and told her not to worry too much. In that instant, something inside Piari seemed to flutter. She realized she never asked his name. That evening, Roll finished reading, but he couldn't shake this awful feeling. Lately, he's been constantly plagued by this thirst, but he couldn't figure out why. But one thing he knew for sure, she calms down whenever he touches Ramilla. The thirst used to go away when he just touched her hand, But at some point, that wasn't enough anymore. No doubt, the thirst builds up. But looking at Ramilla, he felt so much better. Because of that, Roel kept getting so greedy. He's overflowing with happiness, but he needs to hold back. He'd been too complacent. He'd already lost everything 3 times. If happiness slips through his fingers again this time, he won't be able to take it. Life without Ramilla was rough. Lady Rera canceled the welcome ceremony like her son asked. And now this happens. Ramilla unexpectedly spotted the guest in the Count's mansion and was surprised to see it was a girl. Lady Piari wanted to explain everything, so they decided to talk somewhere more private. According to her, the Queen's planning on using her as an excuse to start a war. Riera knew how tired the girl was, so she suggested discussing their next move later. Now, the heroine understood what Mornin was up to. That wasn't in the original story. This princess doesn't seem like a villain, but something still bothered Ramilla. She sensed the girl had suffered a lot. It's like she was Roel in the past. Leaving someone alone in a situation like this is dangerous. In a situation like this, the best way to lower someone's guard is to be adorable. The next day, Carol carried out her orders. The princess couldn't resist Miss Army and Mr. Luan's cuteness. The princess initially refused to eat, but when the kids started acting up, she headed straight for the dining hall. Just like Ramilla said, the princess didn't seem like a bad person to the maid. She was hardworking and kind, but Lady Piari treated the maid cautiously. She was very timid. According to our girl, the reason might be the political infighting happening in the Kingdom of Mornon. Ramilla's plan was to wear the princess out with tough training, so she wouldn't have any energy left to think. When he met the princess, Siberi was nervous and wondered how to even start the conversation. When he decided to ask about life in the castle, Piari said the food was delicious, the room was beautiful, and everyone was super friendly. She even got to meet the cute kids, who kept offering her food. Their intentions were obvious, but the little guys seemed really sweet to her. Anyway, Siberi came to find out if the princess wanted to learn how to fence. Look, there are such things as unforeseen circumstances, where you learn to defend yourself. Piari wasn't worried about the extra effort. She was counting on Mr. Crowd's help. So they agreed to start training tomorrow, after clearing their schedules first. Meanwhile, back in the Kingdom of Morn, everyone was freaking out about whether Piari could handle the mission. Believing the princess was talented, the queen was confident she'd pull it off. Just then, Jacques, the acting coachman, burst into the hall with news of major trouble. The only reason he wasn't in the Crowd Kingdom right now was because the princess had been kidnapped. After some dude from the Crowd family killed the knights, he grabbed the princess and vanished, leaving no one alive. Hearing news like that, it was clear they couldn't just sit around and do nothing. Making a snap decision, the queen ordered everyone to prepare for war with the Crowd County. Starting today, the princess begins her training, and as Ramilla figured, there's nothing like a good workout. She was so innocent, Roel just wanted to hold her tight. The heroine asked Siberi to become the princess's teacher and train her in swordsmanship. At practice, Princess Piari gave it her all, diligently doing every physical exercise. Watching the other knights, she realized they really were preparing for a fight with the Mornin Kingdom. She even offered her help to prevent the war. But since she doesn't know squat about politics, Siberi just asked her to write a friendly letter. The recipient? The Mornin Kingdom. She's got to write about everything that's happened to her. Commoners are against the war, and the nobles who support the former queen won't be happy about the unrest either. If the kingdom starts fighting itself, the heroes will buy themselves some time. Trying to buy us some time, Piari suggested we write to my uncle. Meanwhile, Fidel headed into the woods, where he spotted these weird yellow ribbons tied to the trees. Not long before that, the Count tasked him with delivering a letter to the Kingdom of Mornon. If the queen makes any moves at the border, the Count told him to fall back. Then find another route, but he had to get the message to Hyansu in western Mornon. Just when Fidel was praying, nothing would happen to him. His hopes got crushed when an arrow whizzed right past his head. He ran smack into Mornon knights near the border, and judging by their faces, they meant business. The second they realized he was from Crowd County, they charged. Fidel couldn't handle them alone. Even after a few days, Mornon couldn't get any backup from the southern region. Turns out they're short on soldiers. That's what the southern region told them. Word is, the guy in the east has a serious illness. Makes it hard for him to move around. They all hated the new queen from the jump, if you think about it. But Hyance was the one she was really after. The prince, the king's little brother, and a battle-hardened general who used to lead the troops out west. His niece, Piari, got snatched, so he should have rolled in with an army a long time ago. If the queen's plans get exposed, he'll probably try to off her. But even as a general, he wasn't smart enough to figure it all out. Turns out, His Majesty's not doing so hot. Dude's got a major drinking problem that's messing him up. He's in rough shape. He even coughed up blood and passed out the other day. Counting the guys on the border, the Kingdom of Mornin could probably scrape together 12,000 soldiers right now. Even if they threw everyone they had into the mix, the County of Crowd's army would still outnumber them 4-1. On the day of the battle, rumors spread amongst the knights that the princess was under the Count's protection. That's all anyone was talking about. Some idiot started a rumor about war breaking out. Second knew the princess was actually getting help from the Count, and about the Queen's threats to get rid of her. His partner figured it didn't matter whether that letter was fake or not. If the rumors about the princess being under the Count's protection were true, the captain wasn't going to fight. He thought refusing to fight the Count, who's protecting the princess, couldn't be called treason. Sure, second thought, retreating without carrying out orders could be considered treason. But even if that's the case, he didn't think it was worth starting a war over. Suddenly, the princess arrived, escorted by Count Crowd. It was over. The knights didn't have time to react. First off, Piari confirmed the rumors of the queen targeting her, and Siberi, who saved her, was proof. If Count Crowd hadn't shown up when he did, the princess would already be dead. The Mornan army was grateful to Siberi for saving the princess. Looked like war was off the table. So the captain took it on himself to return the princess to the kingdom, like right now. Remembering her last day in the palace, Piari didn't want to go back to a place where nobody listened to her. Hearing that, Siberi decided to step in. He figured they were sending the princess back to the guy who started the war in the first place. While the princess's location is the priority, the Count suggested they discuss the actual reason for their visit first. Mornin has two options. First, get Crowd County's support to overthrow Narvaya. And second, solve everything peacefully for the sake of Mornin Kingdom's stability. The next day, at the Crowd barracks, Siberi announced that the enemy was recalling their troops. That was definitely good news, but it wasn't time to let their guard down just yet. Just in case, Siberi decided to lead the reserve troops. As soon as he left the barracks, the princess trailed after him and offered to walk with him. She figured it was a good time to thank him again for saving her life. Now that the war was over, she could go back to Crowd and chill, but something inside wouldn't let her. Truth is, Piari wanted to stay right there, close to her savior, Mr. Siberi. Word about the princess visiting the camp with the Earl of Crowd got back to Mornin. Turns out the princess was involved, so the rumors were true after all. Figuring they were talking about her attempt to off the princess, the queen couldn't believe even her advisors believed the rumors. The queen thought the princess was lying, maybe even being blackmailed by the County of Crowd. If they don't start a war right now, they'll never pay back the money they borrowed from the royal family. Seeing as everyone was hesitant, the queen decided she didn't need advisors like that. Just when she was about to get rid of those knights, Lord Hyans barged into the room. Turns out those rumors about him coughing up blood were BS. It was just regular wine. He was hoping the queen would figure out why he showed up locked and loaded. This was treason. But since Hyans considered Queen Shin a traitor, he ordered the knights to bring him in. Looks like Her Majesty already knew the coachman they dragged in here, beat to hell. Like he promised, Jacques was forced to spill that the queen ordered the princess's assassination, and if that failed, to pin the attempted murder on the County of Crowd. After all that, the seasoned general hoped everyone present clearly heard the guy's testimony, and he gave the order to arrest the queen for attempting to murder the heir to the Mornin Kingdom. And just like that, Hyans's order was carried out, and Narvia's reign was over. So when she met with Uncle, Piari spilled everything. The cute kids, the amazing Ramili, the whole deal. Master Siberi was also teaching her swordsmanship, and she wanted to train hard and show off her skills. Now that Hyans had taken care of everything back in the kingdom, that psycho queen was done for. As for Piari's father, his condition was still the same, if not worse, frankly. According to Uncle, the king's daughter should be on the throne, not that loony chick. Piari was only 13 back then, way too young to rule, so finding a new queen seemed like the only smart move. Thinking about the future, Hyans offered to help her get back on the throne where she belonged, but she had no desire to go back and asked her uncle to take her place as ruler. Honestly, she's repulsed by the royal palace. Ever since her mom died, that place stopped feeling like home. Her dad, destroying himself more and more each day, and little Piari, desperately needing him. All she could do now was apologize for being such a reckless princess and a shameless niece. Hyans, finally clued in to how clueless he'd been, just let her do whatever she wanted. 'Cause the letter arrived just in time. Hyans hauled ass as soon as he got it from his favorite niece. If he becomes king, future talks are gonna be a drag. But as long as Piari's happy, he's cool. That wasn't a threat, just an old friend asking him to look out for his niece. Time for the Western general to head out, which meant Count Crowd could finally send his soldiers home. Rumor had it Mornin's war plans tanked, which is why you can't rush things. Thinking about the next move in the Count Crowd situation, Antonia figured it was time for a face-to-face. The war was finally over, meaning the heroes could finally chill without a care in the world. But then, Carol rushed in with urgent news. Lord Cassian had arrived unannounced. Even Lord Roll had no clue that Sir Cassian was his wife's grandpa. Count Cassian is the heroine's maternal grandfather, see? Their meeting was a total surprise, but long overdue. Ramilla hadn't seen her gramps in ages. Cassian already met Riera and Shale, and his daughter chewed him out for showing up unannounced. He heard about the coming war and volunteered. But now he's just glad it's over. But since he was here, he figured he'd give out the gifts he brought, congratulating his only granddaughter on her marriage. The reason he was just chilling here like this was his sudden suspension from work. Lately, Count Cassian had started noticing some weird stuff, investigated, and found out why he was sidelined. The budget was constantly leaking for some reason, and after a long search, they were close to finding the source of the problem. But then, out of nowhere, a group of people in black hoods showed up behind him. Good thing the Earl was okay. He stomped those guys right there. But for some reason, after that whole mess, he got suspended from his clerk job. Ramilla was sure the Roll Knights were in the same boat. Just like Cassian figured, the budget was going to weapons. The amount of armor and weapons for the Knights was skyrocketing. After all that went down, it seems the heroine guessed who was targeting Roel. It's gotta be connected to the military somehow, since Earl Cassian got canned for looking into army stuff. Even so, Riera couldn't figure out how her daughter planned to take down the top dogs with no proof. Plus, Shelley said if it were that easy, Grandpa would have finished the job already, because he knows damn well there's nothing good about turning the military brass against them. 'Cause that'd mean the royal family'd be going to war with the Crowd County. The heroine almost reached her goal, but she was powerless to do anything. But right now, Roll wasn't even thinking about that stuff. Ever since he started his new life in Crowd County, all he thought about was how to get acclimated, fast. And later, he focused on getting his legs back in shape. Honestly, his #1 priority was winning over his wife. After that, all he wanted was to enjoy the peace around him, not get revenge. In that moment, Ramilla realized she'd only been thinking about herself, but she was doing it all for him. Still, she kept her worries hidden deep down in her heart, away from Roel. This made him realize he might actually be important to her, and gave them a chance to get closer. Realizing this was a golden opportunity, Ramilla suddenly suggested they should play the part of being closer, just for show. Since they were supposed to be a couple, the guy didn't hesitate, leaned in, and kissed her cheek, a blush creeping onto his face. Turns out, all his wife meant was holding hands, which just made Roel super embarrassed. While she was trying to explain there was nothing shameful about it, the dude straight up vanished. Still, the girl was 100% living the dream. Roel himself kissed her, but the dude's feelings were totally different. He seemed to be beating himself up over a simple peck. He figured he'd acted recklessly, and now had no idea how to even look her in the eye. Suddenly, a box of books caught his attention. Books that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Intrigued, Roel decided to read one, which had Breeding Diary plastered on the cover. After only getting through a couple of lines, he slammed the book shut in a panic, thinking it was way too inappropriate. Roel, who'd never picked up anything like this before, was, to put it mildly, freaked out. Spotting a few more of these books, he got tense, trying to figure out who'd left them in the library. But when he found a bookmark with a name on it, he couldn't believe Ramilla owned all these books. So, she's into trashy romance novels. This should give Roel some insight into what she likes. Every guy in these books was described as confident, radiating purity and elegance, like an aristocrat. Looks like Ramilla's got a thing for handsome men with delicate, refined features. Though Roel never thought of himself as attractive, he had no idea just how good-looking he actually was. But if he could at least try to become like the heroes in those novels, he'd feel a whole lot better about himself. Right then, an unwavering determination blazed inside him, a promise he made to himself. Ramilla, totally clueless, was just chilling, filling her maid in on the latest gossip. When it was time for Cassian to leave, Riera asked him to give her a heads up next time. Before he left, he handed her a letter he couldn't give her earlier, or Madame would be pissed again. It was an invite to the Imperial tournament. Everyone wanted to see the Earl and Countess at that shindig. As provincial aristocrats, they couldn't participate in something like that, getting mixed up in political squabbles. Cassian heard that the Imperial family would unveil a powerful new weapon on the day of the competition. Hearing about it, Shale figured it could upset the balance between the Emperor's couple and the nobility. Uncle got this information while investigating the army's corrupt schemes. Roel was wounded in a mysterious attack while conducting his own investigation. If you put the pieces together, it's clear the army's corruption might be linked to the Imperial Palace's new weapon. The Earl and Countess understood that Roel's misfortune might be the Emperor's doing. So, since that's how it is, Rira suggested we team up to uncover the truth about her brother-in-law and head to the palace. That evening, lying in bed, Roel decided to share his worries with his wife. Thing is, lately, Ramilla's been constantly making him anxious. But right now, all she could think about was the military. It was a total bust. Even on the third day of the operation, seducing the guy was a complete failure. He'd overlooked one important thing. Trying to get closer, Roel said Ramilla had something on her face, giving her the lovey-dovey eyes. But she just figured it was leftover steak she'd eaten earlier. The girl completely misses the hints. If our hero fails again today, he's gonna have to throw in the towel. He was so nervous he lost track of time and jumped into bed as soon as the sun went down. Suddenly, Roel grabbed the edge of his collar and asked if it was hot, trying to be seductive. Even though it's practically winter, Ramilla wanted to crack open a window. Like the man said, no need to open the window, just unbutton a few buttons. No way she was letting him do that. He'd catch his death of cold. She bundled him up tighter, all for his own good. After that, Ramilla bolted, leaving her husband still tied up. She almost lost it and jumped him, so she decided to read a book instead. But then it hit her. She'd heard those words Roel said before. The next day, as soon as the sun came up, she went after Carol, accusing her of blabbing. She blamed the maid for telling her husband about those books. To get to the bottom of it, Ramilla told her exactly what happened last night. So, since Roel was at the library yesterday, it's obvious he stumbled upon those books. The heroine realized her husband found the box she carelessly dumped at the library. It seemed like Roel wasn't totally sure she owned them, so he was deliberately messing with her. After hearing about last night, Carell was happy the master was trying to act like the guys in the novel. Even so, Ramilla didn't want to be a wife who reads smut with her husband right there. Right in the middle of their talk, Roel walked in. An awkward silence instantly filled the room. He came to give them Lady Rira's invitation to join her for breakfast. The maid bailed 'cause she could, but the heroine stayed and decided to ask how much he'd heard. She thought those shady books were the reason for her husband's questionable behavior last night. Unable to hide it anymore, she confessed that they all belonged to her. Ramilla held her breath, ready to accept that the master might be disappointed in her. But Roel just explained his suspicions, which led him to play along and act all romantic. She expected to see a look of utter disappointment, realizing that she was the owner of those dirty books. The hero shouldn't even think for a second that she found him repulsive. His act was amazing. Now that the master knew her tastes, Milady wanted to ask him what he was feeling right now. Like a god, the Viscount felt amazing, because he managed to learn something new about the person he loved. Romance was out of the question, because weird stuff was starting to happen again. At breakfast, Rira mentioned a demonstration of new weapons at the tournament, so she sent Ramilla and Roel to check it out right after breakfast. Since Roel was often in the capital, she asked him to recommend a cool place to go. He said capital cities are built on libraries, but if not that, then a museum or gallery would work. Truth is, Milady has one specific place she's been dying to visit with him. It's the heroine's favorite spot, and when you think about it, it's Roel's favorite too. It's been so long, but his old house hasn't changed one bit. Seeing guests at the door, the butler greeted the day, happy to see Master Roel had recovered. Can you believe Jack was here the whole time? Turns out, after moving to the Crow territory, the heroine decided to buy back his estate. Roel couldn't contain his gratitude, finding out that everyone who worked here before kept their jobs. He was grateful that Ramilla preserved this place so dear to him, and the people he missed so much. After all, a place so dear to the hero's heart will be the same for his wife. Nothing's changed inside since the last time he was here, not one bit. This is where it all kicked off, like a year ago. Back then, the goal felt impossible. Staring up, Roel wondered if his estate's layout was any different than their current place. Luckily, the heroine was saved from having to explain by the butler, who suddenly brought hot tea. This was the house where the hero first met Lady Crowd, making her hope he'd say yes. Heaving a sigh, he cursed himself for turning down her proposal so harshly. Since he'd already apologized for it, Ramilla gave him a chance to make things right. Getting down on one knee, she knew it was sudden, but she came all this way to ask him to marry her. She'd always admired Roel, so she worked up the nerve to ask him to marry her a second time. A knight's sword in her hands, a symbol of her willingness to share everything he had. That was one hell of a proposal, and the hero gladly accepted. She'd proposed a year ago, but told him to treat it like a practice run. Just like the day he first met Ramilla, the Viscount would never forget this day. Finally, they could lock themselves in their mansion and get this honeymoon started. But screw all that. The Earl and Countess just showed up at the estate needing help. According to Shale, the princess is heading to the capital soon, probably making connections. In the original story, there was a scene with her showing up with her fiancé. She visited Roel a few times while he was sick. Back then, during those visits, even though Roel was already having a rough time, she just messed with his head. Afterwards, he fell back into depression, realizing he was totally alone, with no friends or family. But now, the Viscount has Ramilla, and he's not alone anymore. She was gonna flaunt her affection, win this thing, and pay her back double. The heroine was ready for the princess any day, ready to show off her world-famous love. And wouldn't you know it, Princess Ariana Beckwell, the Empire's princess and the first heir of House Beckwell, was right on time. As first heir of House Crowd, Ramilla greeted their guests. The fact that Roel bounced back so fast felt like a miracle to Antonia, and she was genuinely happy. As soon as the princess started feeding Ariana cookies, the heroine remembered this scene from the original story. Shoving a cookie through Roel's teeth, Ramilla successfully blocked the attack. Antonia started feeling sick all of a sudden, and mentioned to Ariana that she'd taken some medicine. Channeling all her acting skills, Ramilla dropped to the Lord's knees and said she felt awful. Just then, the evil stepmother showed up, absolutely furious with what her daughter was doing in front of the princess. Once Arian and Antonia were gone, he voiced his opinion that Lady Crowd had been acting pretty rude. That just made the princess laugh, since she knew the Crowd family didn't stand on ceremony with their own folks. The girl had never seen a mother and daughter act like that before. Before leaving, Antonia took one last look at the mansion, and a flicker of envy crossed her mind. Just then, 2 Black Hood gang members zipped past the princess in front of the main gates. Turning back to look at the beautiful lady, one of them realized he'd seen that face somewhere before. Shucking off their hoods, the 2 young adventurers were finally on their way to see Madame Ramilli. They'd come because they'd dug up some useful intel for her, based on what they'd heard, that there'd be military clashes up north. The heroine figured they'd been in that area. There wasn't any info up north that was particularly important to her, but if the Black Hoods were involved, that was a different story. Turns out the guys ran into Black Hood, and he wanted to burn the letter they were carrying. The note inside said the subject's body might not hold up if the experiment went sideways. Looking at that, Roel got this feeling like he'd seen it all before. That's when Ramilla guessed his memories might be tied to the day he lost his. Now the pieces were finally starting to click into place in her head. Roel was figuring out the truth too damn fast and was about to spill the beans to everyone. To shut him up, these guys staged that rogue night accident and tried to take him out. But it didn't go down exactly as they planned, and Roel ended up losing his memory and the use of his legs. Because his memory could come back at any moment, Black Hood put a tail on him. According to Rail, if the experiment's illegal, the mastermind's gotta keep it under wraps. Jack just dropped a bomb. Said some earl's looking for you, and it's serious and personal. When they met, this Monsieur Chell guy says it's the perfect season for some big happenings. Once he wraps things up in the capital, he wants to offer to host our wedding. After meeting the Earl, Roel couldn't believe he and Ramilla were gonna be legit lovers after tying the knot. He wanted to do things right, you know, a proper proposal. He gathered himself and started rehearsing the speech he'd give his bride-to-be. He planned to practice until those words rolled off his tongue like he meant them. Watching him from the side, Ramilla couldn't figure out how someone could be so damn charming and cute. A creepy laugh caught Riera's attention, and the heroine almost had a heart attack when she showed up. Thinking her daughter was acting out of line, Madame ordered her and Roel to get some gifts and apologize to the princess. This was the famous capital city cake, the kind of deliciousness her ladyship's stomach could definitely get behind. Riera said the imperial gardens are open, and everyone thinks it's the perfect place for a date. When they arrived, the main character couldn't help but be amazed at the imperial palace. She was going to present the cake, but since the princess was away, the guests were asked to wait outside. Before the princess arrived, they decided to admire the garden, and Ramilla was struggling not to devour the cake the whole time. Everything around her made a good impression. The garden seemed so huge and spacious, but the real beauty was in Roel's eyes as he looked at her. His wife's blue hair reminded him of a clear sky. Looking into his sweet eyes as he gazed at her, she suspected he was about to confess his feelings. Saying Ramilla's hair reminded him of the sky, Roel was thinking about how beautifully it shimmered in the sun. Those words almost blinded her and sent her to the afterlife. Her husband spoke and looked like pure innocence itself, But honestly, she was mortified that she'd been fantasizing about doing some seriously nasty stuff with him. Her innocent husband was hoping she'd forgive him if he admitted he thought about nasty stuff way more than she did. What she heard made Ramila feel like she'd landed in freaking heaven, not the Imperial Palace. Loud taps from a cane snapped her back to reality. The Empire's princess had finally returned to the palace. Suddenly, her legs buckled. Antonia dropped her cane and collapsed lifeless on the cold ground. When she came to, Ramila figured the doctor should probably stick around her chambers, considering what just happened. But after fainting, the princess insisted everyone not worry about her, saying she'd take care of her health after the celebration. The heroine only brought it up because she was genuinely feeling uneasy. As a treat, she brought a strawberry chocolate cake with whipped cream from the capital's best bakery. Just the mention of chocolate made Antonia recoil in horror, but finding out it was a gift from the countess, she started eating the cake. After just a sliver of cake, the princess finally cracked a smile at her guests. She was cracking up last time too, thanks to Ramila, when her mom was pinching her cheeks. Suddenly, a maid brought an order from the emperor. His Majesty wanted to see his daughter. That was the end of their visit. Lady Ramila and Lord Roel left the imperial palace, but it still felt weird how chill everyone was about the Empire's princess fainting. Thinking about it, she realized it was true, and there weren't as many servants in the palace as she thought. Maybe there's a solid reason why there are so few people around the princess. Having summoned his daughter, His Majesty the Emperor already knew she'd met with people from the Crown County. When he found out they were just eating cake, he decided to find out what that was all about. The Emperor didn't want details, though. He just hoped things were going well with Aaron. I mean, he thought this guy was the perfect wingman for schmoozing with the aristos, someone you just don't let go. Dad told Antonia to make damn sure they both pull their weight tomorrow. She was hoping, just this once, he'd asked her because he was worried. But nope, business as usual. That evening, the Empire's princess felt the urge again to climb the tower and stare at the night view with her mom. Her mother rested here in the dark of night, her angel in times of trouble. Antonia couldn't help but smile whenever she thought about that kid. She mentioned Ramil popped by for a bit and saved her bacon when the princess fainted. Never seen a noble lady drool over cake like that before. Hearing the girl passed out, Arjun got all worried about how she was doing. Well then, the princess said he shouldn't have gone off alone and come back so late. The first heir took off because there was trouble in the lab, and His Majesty rescheduled the council without a heads up. Thinking about the earldom again, the princess wanted to know what Arjun thought Roel would do. The way I see it, even the Viscount's gonna have his doubts. He won't move without proof. And even if he remembers everything completely, he'll still be scared of the imperial family's power. He won't make the first move. The next day, the day of the Imperial Council, His Imperial Majesty appeared before his guests. He was supposed to show them the new weapon today. That's why he got everyone here so damn early. Ramila had been waiting for this for ages. She was so flustered, she didn't even get to hit the restroom. But among the nobles gathered in the palace, she couldn't spot the princess anywhere. Suddenly, the hall doors swung open, and a bunch of members of the Black Hood gang strode in, bathed in bright light. Our girl knew the imperial family was in league with them, but she couldn't believe they were worthy of this kind of spotlight. These are the recruits the emperor was talking about, and he's about to show us why they're worth a damn. Then, out of nowhere, the dude just shoves a sword right through one of the new guys. But he tells everyone not to freak out, because the kid's totally fine and healthy. These guys are invincible, an immortal army, with magic crystals embedded in their bodies. You could hear the whispers going around. People were freaked out by the thought of him sticking crystals in corpses. But what's even scarier is that Roel seems to get why the lab was up north during the war. Maybe they needed the bodies of dead soldiers, so they set up shop right in the middle of the fighting. Once the guests chilled out, it was time for the real show, a demonstration of their combat power. Just then, some guy from the Black Hood group stabs the emperor with a sword. Now no one can stop the great empire. The emperor felt a sharp pain inside, realizing he was in deep, deep trouble. He just couldn't wrap his head around how Antonia, his own daughter, could pull something like this. Back when Antonia was a kid, the emperor, her own dad, was always super strict with her. The girl was convinced it was all for the best. You know, tough love parenting. That's what she thought anyway, until she found her late mother's diary. March 1st, year 27, her mom became an orphan, and Marquis Roger took her in, making her a Roger from then on. April 8th, the Marquis let her call him by his first name. It was an awesome day. Judging by the entries, Antonia realized this was her deceased mother's diary. May 3rd, year 38, she met Rastine at a ball, and their first encounter felt like a blink. February 8th, year 39, His Majesty announced the death of the late emperor. From the diary, Antonia learned her mom and dad both lost their parents because of the invaders. She figured if mom was still hurting this bad, how much worse must it have been for her dad? August 9th, 1939. Rustin popped the question, and she felt a chill, even though it was summer. December 28th, wedding day. Her father dropped to his knees, a look of pure terror on his face, whispering she had Suan blood. That's when the scared princess finally understood why her father always looked at her with such disgust. Antonia arrived on November 24th, 1940. March 4th, 1942, His Majesty found out about his wife's background. From June 8th onward, Rustin stopped seeking her out completely. October 10th, 1943, the Emperor's servant officially announced that she would no longer appear in public. September 5th, 1944, Antonia said she was scared of the snow. She was captivated by the words of this sweet little kid. January 1st, 47, His Majesty finally showed up and just handed her some papers. It was all about experiments to trigger the Beastman gene. On February 2nd, the woman was terrified of the experiment, but her husband threatened their daughter's safety. February 15th, Antonia's title. Her mother agreed to the experiment in exchange for her coronation. Starting June 2nd, the woman couldn't tell what was a dream and what was real, had trouble understanding speech, and was spitting up blood. A year later, on February 5th, she lied to the emperor and failed. Antonia wasn't supposed to find out anything. On February 8th, Mom wrote that Antonia loved desserts, hoping she could stay with her for at least a month. The woman just wanted to be close. That was the last entry in Antonia's mother's diary. Staring at her cold body, the girl hoped her mom wanted to tell her something, or give her some kind of task. Just say something, anything, to make it easier. In that moment, the princess felt her mother's gentle touch on her face, wiping away her tears. It felt like this was it, the awakening. Antonia was smiling from her mother's touch. She was dead set on getting revenge, using the powers she inherited from her. The day of the Imperial Council, there was straight-up treason. The emperor fell to his knees, powerless. What happened wasn't an accident. The attack was way too precise to be spontaneous. Gathering the group members in a circle, one of them told all the guests to stay put. He warned them that if they moved even an inch, they were dead. Now, those whose names were just called out were asked to gather in the center of the hall. These people supported the overthrow of the late empress. The immortal warrior told people to check the letters, which contained evidence of supporting the late empress's overthrow. Those whose names weren't called were asked to leave by the group members. That's when Count Reiner took the sinner's side. He wasn't about to bail and run like a coward. Since the group was planning to take him out, the whole Reiner family dared them to even try. The immortal figured these worms weren't worth protecting, so they deserved to die by their hands. Believing they had it coming, Count Reiner told his daughter and Roel to get the hell out of there, now. Because even if they crushed the rebellion, it wouldn't matter if the ringleader got away. So, the heroine and her husband bolted from the hall and suddenly bumped into a guy in a black hood in the corridor. Turns out, Aryan wasn't just refusing to say where the princess was. He was in on it with her. Since they didn't know the princess's next move, Roel took charge and told his wife to run ahead. Surprisingly, Aryan revealed that the princess was at the top of the stairs at the end of the corridor. He warned Ramil to be careful, because the princess was stronger than she looked, which is why he wasn't lying. The heroine's gotta find out if the princess is really dangerous. She's leaving the rest to Roel. As a member of the rebellion, Ariani didn't need a reason to fight for what's right. In the end, Roel follows his beloved too, and points his sword at the royal family. But that was wrong for the guy himself, he apologized, saying his name was Roel Crowd. Meanwhile, Ramilla reached the tower and burst into the room, ordering the princess to surrender and shut her mouth. She froze at the door, seeing the recently deceased empress sitting up right in front of her. She looked like she was just dozing off. But according to Antonia, her mom's dead from the side effects of human experimentation. In this story, not just the main character Roel, but even the side characters have their own painful backstories. You can understand the princess's pain, caused by the father she killed. But Ramilla only cared about how much she contributed to Roel's suffering. The second Antonia smirked. It was obvious she was behind that accident. Anyone who found out about the experiments got iced, so Roel was lucky to only lose his memory and mobility. The heroine wasn't expecting to hear that her husband would be straight up executed if he remembered anything. The princess decided to visit early, to figure out if he remembered anything, and decide what to do with him afterward. During her visit, Antonia kept asking questions, wanting to be sure Roel's condition hadn't changed. And then he married Lady Ramilla, and everything went sideways. The war ended before it even started. Accepting her inevitable death, the princess decided to spill the beans about all her plans and intentions. Knowing the magic stone couldn't make a corpse work like that, Ramilla figured the mage had been recruited. In that moment, Antonia revealed her true face as an awakened beast person. Those people were devouring her power. Awakening is born from an intense desire connected to something, which then transforms into an ability. So, the Empire's princess has the power to control corpses. Since her life sucked, Ramilla offered her a chance to just give up. Suddenly, Antonia bit into a magic stone, a massive mana catalyst for a mage. Absorbing it would just cause pain to a normal person, but the princess just overloaded on mana. Feeling the first hit from her rival, our heroine realized she might never see her husband's handsome face again. As the princess said, no matter how strong the Crowd clan is, a person can only defeat their equal. Before striking with a sword overflowing with insane mana, Ramilla asked where that confidence came from. Seeing bloody wounds from the powerful blow, Antonia realized her opponent wasn't bluffing. At the crucial moment, a crash echoed as Lord Roel burst into the room, relieved. Seeing him, the princess slumped and demanded to know what happened to Ariane. Just hearing Roel say he only stunned him made her feel a whole lot better. Staring at the sword pressed against her throat, the imperial princess knew time was running out. Now she was facing two opponents, so they told her to give up and end this charade. Already planning to die anyway, the girl gripped her blade tightly, wanting to end it all. And now, aiming the sword at her own throat with furious strength, she told Ramiel to avenge her husband's suffering. Just then, Antonia felt warm breath on her back. Turning around, she saw the gentle and warm face of her mother. As if alive but petrified, the late empress begged them not to kill her daughter. The heroine was torn between thinking the corpse was controlled and pleading for the girl's life to be spared. Soon, Roel calmed his wife down by telling her that the two had left the castle. The Black Hoods aren't moving either, it's finally over. From now on, Lady Crowd promised she wouldn't get caught up in such depressing books. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes, which was a total mystery to Roel, one he was dying to solve. Ramilla didn't know if she was jumping to conclusions out of pity, even though the princess was the one who hurt Roel. Everything was cool though, because the master was all right, thanks to his wife. Because even if someone else had been holding the sword at that moment, he would have done the same thing when he woke up. After the princess passed out, her mom turned to ash and vanished. She went with relief in her eyes, thanking them for saving her child. Not knowing what the princess was thinking as she looked at the sky from there, Ramilla really liked the quiet and the beautiful sky. That's when she suggested seizing the moment and doing it right there, talking about confessing. But Roel remembered he'd left the confession script on the table and suggested they hold off on that idea till they got home. The girl was clueless about what was eating him up, since all it took was just 3 words for her. So, Viscount finally spilled the beans on his feelings. He was being real when he kissed her hand. By the hand of fate that brought these two hearts together, he vowed to spend the rest of his life with Lady Ramilla. Looks like all her twisted fantasies came true when she went wild and locked lips with him. After all this time together, she finally admitted she loved him too. This time, Roel wanted to make the first move, kissing his girl. Now they could do it anywhere. On their wedding day, kids were running wild through the mansion. Army said she'd been watching the wedding prep. She decided to give her little bro a play-by-play and asked him what he thought about the wedding. Truth is, the dude's heart was going a mile a minute. He was seriously freaking out. But he was grateful to his sister for always being there for him. The ceremony's about to start, so Army booked it to the hall, wiping happy tears from her eyes. Meanwhile, in the bridal suite, Roel was sprawled out on the floor in her dress, hadn't slept all night, and had no clue what to do. Little Army was the only one who could get her up, after coming to check on her and see how she was feeling before the wedding. All Ramiel had left to do was convince her parents to pass that law banning divorces. Since the ceremony was starting soon, Carol took the girl to the hall, and she said goodbye to her big sis. On this amazing day, surrounded by their closest friends and family, everything whispered of love, joining two hearts in marriage. Everyone was on edge, but the main problem was the bride still hadn't shown up. Furious, Count Crowd figured she'd bailed on the wedding, but Riera tried to talk him out of it. Finally, Ramiel showed up in the hall, late for the ceremony, looking like she'd actually just woken up. After greeting the two lovebirds, Orm asked them to come up to the wedding altar, walking along the flower-covered path. The main character was ready to take the flower path and invited Ramilia to come along.